Good evening, everyone. Excuse me, I need to. Good evening, everyone. Got rid of the feedback. Good evening to everyone in David Hicks and those that are also joining us via Teams. So I've got quite a few notes I'm afraid I need to read out to you. So first, I'll explain the process we'll be following this evening. In order to keep members and officers safe, there will be limited numbers seated in the council chamber. Therefore, some members will be seated in another meeting room at Chute End. These members will be seen on screen and can hear everything that is being said in this council chamber. They will also be able to take part in any discussions. When any vote is undertaken, those members will come into the council chamber one at a time to state how they wish to vote on a particular item. All other members have been invited to join the meeting via Teams. These members can take part in any discussions, but are not entitled to propose, second, or vote on any of the items. As advised previously, all members, except those who have a medical exemption, are expected to wear a face mask whilst in the council chamber and in any other rooms in Chute End, and these may only be removed when speaking. Could I also please ask you to ensure that any mobile devices or mobile phones are switched off, not set to silent? If you're participating via Teams, when you are not speaking or being asked to speak, please mute your microphones. If you do not mute your microphone, it will be muted for you. To assist people viewing the meeting, could everyone participating via Teams turn off their cameras and only turn them on when speaking, and also introduce themselves whenever they speak? To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, could members wishing to speak via Teams please use the hands up facility whenever possible? And please do not speak until asked to do so by myself. Could those members in the chamber please raise their hands whenever they wish to speak? Please note, this meeting is currently being webcast live. In order to make it easier for those watching the meeting, I am proposing that members do not need to stand when speaking. Please note that to avoid the chat function on Microsoft Teams being used inappropriately, it has been disabled for this meeting. And finally, may I remind everyone that I intend to adhere strictly to the timings set out in the Constitution. So, before I move on to agenda item 49, I wish Council to respect 1 minute silence in memory of Sir David Amess, who unfortunately lost his life not that long ago. He was the 6th MP, the last being Labour's Joe Cox, around about 5 years ago, that has actually lost their life doing their role as a Member of Parliament since the Second World War. So can I please ask everyone to stand for 1 minute's memory moment. So now we'll move on to the agenda proper. First of all, item 49, do we have any apologies, please?
Two apologies, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Prue Bray and Councillor Gary Cowan.
Thank you. Any other apologies in the room at all? Nope. So we move on to the minutes of the previous. Oh, sorry. Councillor Bowring.
Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. I was going to refer to members who are remote, but they are attending, so apologies.
That's okay. Minutes of previous meeting, item 50, on pages 17 to 52 of the agenda. Can I ask members? You're ahead of me. Councillor Jones, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The minutes of the last meeting do not include the Leader of the Council's deferred response to the supplementary question by a resident, Mr. Philip Meadowcroft, with regard to members' use of private email addresses. The subject is not politically sensitive and the resident has touched on a matter that has implications for all of us as members. In the Constitution, under line 4.2.9.9 written answers, it says, any question which cannot be dealt with during public question time, either because of lack of time, because of non-attendance of the member to whom it has been put, or because the member answering the question requires further information not available at the time, will be deemed to have been put and shall be the subject of a written reply within 7 working days to the person asking the question. The answer shall also be recorded in the minutes of the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I've just taken advice from Democratic Services, and they say that that particular standing order that you've quoted relates to the question itself, not the supplementary question. So that's what Democratic Services are saying. Sorry. Councillor Frewen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can refer to page 36, the supplementary answer on the top of that page to my question. The executive member who answered that very kindly agreed to return with an action plan to ensure that the issues with the send school transport never happened again. The supplementary answer there doesn't seem to mention the fact that it will be returned with an action plan. Could I ask that that is added, please?
I think that's a reasonable request. It will be added. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or queries on the minutes? Otherwise, I will sign them. Thank you. I've just been reminded. Can I have a vote then? All those in favour of me signing the minutes, please show. That's carried. Thank you. And for the record, can I have just a show of hands that are against or abstain? Thank you. I am now signing minutes and passing them over. So item 51 is declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest at all in the chamber? Councillor Hulsall.
I'm a member. Sorry, I'm a member of the Optilis Holdings Board. Unremunerated.
Thank you. Councillor Kaiser.
I'm also director of Optilis and on the housing companies.
Councillor Munro.
Likewise, me, director, non-paid director of the housing companies.
Councillor Jorgensen.
I'm a non-executive director of Modern Homes Limited.
And Councillor Smith.
Same again for me, the housing companies.
Okay. Is there any declarations of interest in the David Hicks room? Can't see any. Okay, thank you. So now we'll move on to the Mayor's announcements. As usual, I've actually not got any major announcements, but I understand that the leaders of the 4 groups we have here would like to say something about Carol Camus, who we know has moved on to pastures green. So Councillor Hulsall, would you like to start?
Not yet. She's not moved on, but she will do. I think it's Derby's gain for our loss. Carol Camus came to Woking Borough Council just over 3 years ago, initially on an interim contract. Her talents were quickly recognised and she was promoted to being a Director of Children's Services. Carol has been a force of nature. She has transformed a position from where the borough has been an Ofsted level of requiring improvement to being good in provision of SEND services. She has reorganised staff to greatly reduce the number of interim staff. In the meantime, she has created an environment where people want to come and work in our children's services at Woking. Carol has stewarded children's services during the pandemic, which has had an enormous impact upon our educational system, as we all know from our residents. Carol has overseen continuity of education to our 22,000 school children against many different challenges. She has worked tirelessly to put our schools together and work to get our children vaccinated, which has meant considerable work with our health partners organising delivery of jabs. Carol has started new initiatives, such as a division addressing mental health needs. She has chaired and represented Woking on boards with our partners in health, wellbeing and our partnered staff. All this she has done with great energy, great intellect and force of application to ensure that there has been consistent delivery. Carol has an understanding of what it takes to be a true director, providing leadership, architecting structure and motivation to all of those around her, as well as attention to budgetary control. My executive member for Children's Services has appreciated Carol's ability to be frank, objective and mindset to get things done. All of us that have come into contact with Carol have seen her demonstrate openness, integrity and a willingness to be challenged in order to get the best for the children. Carol leaves a very positive legacy upon which her successors and team can build. Carol is deservedly moving to a bigger job in Derby, and we are sure that her talents will carry her through bigger roles beyond that. Carol, we wish you all the best for the future and wherever that takes you, and thank you for what you have done for us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Hulsall. Councillor Jones?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Sadly, we are losing Carol, our Director of Children's Services, in just a few days' time. She'll be leaving for pastures new and an authority that is somewhat bigger than Wokingham. All of the Liberal Democrat councillors wish her well in her new role. She has done an absolutely fantastic job turning around a department that had been struggling for a number of years and could, prior to her arrival, have been taken over at any time by Ofsted. Under her calm, clear, confident and determined leadership, things have been changed for the better. And she leaves us in a much better place than she found us. We are grateful for what she has done for Wokingham Borough Council and our residents, and we wish her well in her new role. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would also just like to echo my fellow councillors' comments and thank Carol. She's made a fantastic contribution in her 3 years with us, really made a difference to children's services in Woking. So thanks to Carol, and we wish her all the very best with her future endeavours in Derby.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. And the final one, Councillor Farud.
Thank you. In my short time as a councillor, I've had very little contact with Carol, but my esteemed colleague, independent colleague, Gary Cowan, and my predecessor as leader of the independent group, Richard Dolinsky, both hold her in great respect. I can think of no higher accolade, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Fruin. And I had some dealings with Carol on a working party, and I can totally agree and concur with all the comments. A very highly professional officer, and it's a sad loss. Yeah. So thank you very much. So the final thing on Mayor's announcement, I would like to welcome the new leader of the Liberal Democrats, Councillor Clive Jones, who has stepped in to, I think, some big shoes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Very kind of you to give me these few seconds. I'm absolutely delighted to have been chosen to lead the Liberal Democrat group. As you say, I have very big and very successful shoes to fill. Councillor Lindsay Ferris has done an absolutely fantastic job leading the Liberal Democrat group for the last 5 years. Although he's taking life a little easier, I'm delighted that he's continuing as a Lib Dem spokesman. For me, it's going to be absolutely great that my friend will be continuing to offer wise counsel for some time yet. Mr. Mayor, thank you for giving me the opportunity to pay this public tribute to Lindsay.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Halsall?
I would like to just join in that tribute to the ex-leader of the Liberal Party with whom I've worked on a ward basis and on a council basis for a number of years, and look forward to buying him lunch. And I wish the present leader of the Liberal Democrats all the best.
You buying me lunch as well?
I'd be delighted.
Thank you, Councillor Halsall. I hope you put it on your expense return, please. That's the end of the Mayor's announcements, although there really were announcements for other people. I now would like to move on to one more thing for somebody else. Thank you to all councillors who've actually signed the No to Hate Crime petition that was created by CLASP, a very good charitable organisation for people with learning disabilities. One or two of you, I think, have yet to sign. They are available down on that middle desk there. If at the end of this meeting, if you haven't yet signed, please sign. It will be absolutely fantastic for me to give the CLASP a petition that's got 54 councillors on it. Thank you. Okay. This is live, by the way. Carol Camus is on online at the moment on Teams, and she has asked to respond to those comments.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening to everybody. I just wanted to say a massive thank you for all the very kind words that you said. It was totally unexpected. I'm here in my duty as director, as I always would be, but I didn't expect for everybody to be saying such kind things. And I will miss Wokingham, but as everybody has said, I am moving on to be an executive director at Derbyshire County Council. But it means a lot that you have publicly thanked me for my work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol. Right. I'm just waiting for Anne to interrupt me. No, are we okay? I think those were 3 good interruptions. So we move on to public question time. Agenda item 53 is Nicholas Marshall on Teams to answer. Okay. I'm being informed that we don't think he is, so therefore there'll be a written answer to that one. And I do know Andy Croy is here, he's sitting down. Would you like to ask your question, please, Councillor Halsall?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the interest of time, I would like to ask the question standing in my name.
First of all, welcome, Andy. The council, along, invite me to read out the question. The council, along with our voluntary and community sector partners, are developing an anti-poverty strategy to help address the hardships faced by residents in the borough on the back of COVID-19 pandemic. This strategy works alongside the recovery strategy and the equalities plan in addressing the challenges faced by residents, tackling inequality. The development of this strategy is underpinned by a cross-party working group and is being co-designed, co-produced and co-delivered with our VCS partners, and their continued engagement and contribution is critical to the delivery of the strategy over the 5 years. According to the latest information provided by the DWP to the council, there are 3,630 Woking residents in receipt of universal credit, of which 1,427 are council tax support. This information, along with insights identified by working with VCS groups, has been and continues to be crucial for ensuring that we understand how best to support our residents. The support has included the allocation of numerous forms of financial assistance to those who have suffered financial hardship throughout the course of the pandemic. Addressing hardship across the borough is a key priority for me, and I see this strategy as a tangible step on the journey to not only understand the needs and residents of our, but also to make clear commitments about how we as a local authority, in conjunction with our VCS partners, can work together to make a real difference to local people's lives. As you know, I've been actively lobbying government, particularly since the onset of the pandemic, to get the best deal for Woking residents, and I will continue to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Halsall. And Mr. Croy, do you have a supplementary?
I do. So that sounds like no. And I have to say I'm quite stunned that the borough has not made any formal representation about restoring universal credit. The borough's anti-poverty strategy, such as it is going to be totally inadequate in terms of making up for the loss of the £20 a week uplift, isn't it?
The question, sorry. The council is working in partnership with the VCS to develop an anti-poverty strategy that will help address the hardships faced by residents in the borough on the back of the COVID pandemic. The council is working in conjunction with the voluntary and community sector to ensure the strategy meets the current and future needs of our residents. As part of this work, the council is working closely with the VCS groups to ensure household support grant can support those most in need over the coming weeks and months. For example, the provision of food vouchers for families in receipt of free school meals in school holidays. This includes the recent October half term and the upcoming Christmas, February and Easter breaks. The council and VCS are also working in partnership to ensure the household support grant is used to reduce the impact of rising fuel prices through targeted support model, which includes working with the residents to provide advice and help as residents need it during the winter months. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Councillor Halsall and Mr. Croy. Please, can I ask? Thank you for doing it. Fine. So the next section is agenda item 54, a petition. I believe Councillor Burgess has got a petition. Can I remind you that you have 3 minutes to summarise it, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I have a petition of 60 signatures from residents who want a safer crossing and traffic calming measures at the junction of Wiltshire Road and Rectory Road in Woking. The signatures were collected by residents in my ward who took the time to go door to door in several apartment complexes on Wiltshire Road that are mostly populated by retired residents. These include Fleur-de-Lys and Danesfield. I'd like to thank Mrs. Jean Jones in particular for the work she has done on this issue. The petition came about because many of the residents of this area are frightened by the speed of the traffic coming down Rectory Road and along Wiltshire Road. The speed of the traffic and the lack of a safe crossing point at this junction means that a simple walk into town can become a very unpleasant experience. What should be an enjoyable activity turns into an ordeal. Crossing a road in our town should not and must not be an ordeal. We have to do so much better, and the solution here is to install proper crossing points so pedestrians can cross safely and effortlessly, and traffic calming measures such as a 20-mile-an-hour zone or other measures in the area. It's true that there is a crossing further up Wiltshire Road, but this crossing cannot be accessed without crossing the top of Norwich Avenue. The Norwich Junction has been designed with the purpose of encouraging vehicles to turn off Wiltshire Road at speed. Our older and less mobile residents are having to make a judgment about heavy traffic flows approaching from behind trying to cross 2 lanes of traffic at a point where the road has been made much wider and specifically designed to prioritise car drivers. It's no wonder that many of our older residents here view a simple walk into town trepidation. I've also had feedback from younger families in this area for whom there's no safe crossing point between here and Cantley Park without taking a considerable diversion. But in particular, we should not be asking older residents, many of whom have declining mobility, to walk further than they have to. And we should be doing everything we can to make Wokingham feel like a safe, welcoming and enjoyable environment for pedestrians. Mr. Mayor, I'm calling on the Executive Member for Highways and her officers to take real action on this issue. We are all here to serve our residents and we must act on their request as clearly shown in the support for this petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. Can you pass your petition to, at the end of the meeting, to Anne? And Anne will make sure it gets to the appropriate officer. Thank you. So we're now moving on to item 55, the adoption of the statement of gambling principles. Now, when we get into the debate, I will be polling obviously 3 locations here, David Hicks' room, and on Teams. And that will be the same for all debates from now until the end of this meeting. So can I ask who's proposing this particular item? Councillor Patman, thank you. And do you have a seconder? Councillor Jorgensen. So can I ask the proposer to move the report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this has been the result of a lot of work on a lot of areas and also organisations outside of this authority to approve the details of this. And I think the licensing committee also considered it and looked at some of the issues there. And I would like to get your support in approving the statement of gambling principles and for the consideration of the consultation responses as well.
Thank you, Councillor Patman. Councillor Jorgensen, do you want to speak now or is that your right?
I'll reserve my right, thank you.
Here. So starting now, anybody else wish to speak from the chamber, please put your hands up. Yes. Yes, the one. In David Hicks, are there anybody who wishes to speak on this agenda item? Oh, Councillor Smith, I think it is at the back. And on Teams, are there anybody wishing to speak on this agenda item? Please raise your hand on Teams. Can't see anybody. No. Right. So we'll go to Councillor Bishop first, please.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the officers and the councillors for all their work in putting into place this very thorough statement of gambling principles. I think many of us on this council and many residents will be sorry that we cannot go further in regulating the way the gambling industry operates in Wokingham, but we recognise that our hands are tied by central government regulation. It is deeply ironic that we as a council are required to ensure that children and other vulnerable people are protected from being harmed or exploited by gambling, but we are then greatly restricted in how we might do this. The UK gambling industry targets the poor and the vulnerable, and it does so deliberately. It preys on those who are economically vulnerable, and it actively targets those who may have a gambling problem. Problem gambling causes devastating harm to people's finances, livelihoods, and relationships. Unsurprisingly, the vast majority of people would prefer not to have gambling venues on their high street. It's a shame that we as a council cannot do more to honour their wishes. There's also been an explosion in online gambling, available 24/7 on mobile phones and pushed incessantly on sports TV. Some councils are taking active steps despite the government restrictions to limit the harm caused by gambling. For example, they're training council officers on what they can do to ensure gambling operators follow the law and to help them strengthen prevention of underage gambling. They're promoting gambling self-exclusion schemes to help those who want to control their gambling. Some health and wellbeing boards have developed strategic health approaches to problem gambling, while working with known high-risk groups such as those suffering from mental health issues. I hope that in the next few years, this council will also take active steps to provide our residents with the information and support to prevent gambling addiction and to support those who sadly do become addicted. As a first step towards this, the Lib Dems support this statement of gambling principles and hope that other councillors will join us in voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Councillor Smith in the David Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been reading this document and there's repeated references to B, C and D gaming machine categories. Within the glossary, there's then a statement of gaming machines and what they are can be found at the end of the glossary. However, I cannot actually see a definition of an A, a B, a C or a D type gaming machine within this document. Could somebody provide a summary of what these are? Because a lot of the principles seems to be the number of these sorts of machines that can be in each location up to a maximum certain number, and certain locations can have B or C or D, and therefore it'd be very helpful to have a summary as to what the different gaming machines are, either in this document or provided as part of the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Smith. I'm not sure, just going to ask whether we can have an explanation now, or it's going to have to be in the minutes, because it sounds quite germane to the overall licensing. Oh, okay. I'm being advised by Democratic Services that the licensing committee needs to be, licensing team are needed to provide that data, so we can't do that today. Yeah, we will circulate that information because to me it seems to be quite critical in making a decision. But having said that, just going to do one last sweep before I call on the seconder to speak. Anybody else wishes to speak on this? No. Anybody in David Hicks? No. I'll ask the seconder to please speak.
Okay. Thank you very much. Clearly, there's a lot of work gone into this and very wide consultation. See the list on page 89 of the consultees. There's been a tremendous amount of work gone into this, and I commend the report to all members to support it, please.
Thank you, Councillor Jorgensen. So we'll now move to the vote. I'll take a vote from people in the chamber first, and got to be a recorded vote. We can have a lot of these. So we'll do the chamber first, or do we want to do that? Okay, they're going to be in alphabetical order as last time, and that means people need to be ready to come in from the David Hicks. So can we start?
Councillor Sam Akhtar.
Okay. Hang on to the vote.
Cut.
4.
Councillor Keith Baker.
Abstain.
Councillor Barry Parr.
4.
Councillor Rachel Bishop Firth.
4.
Laura Blumenthal. Chris Bowring.
4.
Shirley Boyd.
4.
Rachel Burgess.
4.
Anne Chadwick. Jenny Chang.
4.
Stephen Conway.
4.
Phil Cunnington.
4.
Peter Dennis.
4.
Lindsay Ferris.
4.
Michael Firmager,
4.
Paul Fishwick,
4.
Jim Fruin,
4.
John Halsall,
4.
David Hare,
4.
Pauline Hellier-Simons,
4.
Graham Howe,
4.
Clive Jones,
4.
Norman Jorgensen,
4.
John Kaiser,
4.
Sarah Kerr,
4.
Abdul Loys,
4.
Tahir Meher,
4.
Murag Malvern, Charles Magetz,
4.
Rebecca Magetz,
4.
Adrian Mather,
4.
Andrew Mickleborough,
4.
Stuart Monroe,
4.
Gregor Murray,
4.
Barry Patman,
4.
Jackie Rance,
4.
Angus Ross,
4.
Daniel Sargent,
4.
Ian Shenton,
4.
Imogen Shepherd-Bay,
4.
Rochelle Shepherd-Bay,
4.
Caroline Smith,
4.
Chris Smith,
4.
Wayne Smith,
4.
Bill Soane,
4.
Alison Swaddle.
4.
Agreed, actually.
That's been approved unanimously, I think. So thank you very much. And we move then on to item 56, which is the members' question time. First up is Councillor Bishop first.
Thank you very much. I've got a question about our garden waste disposal. We have an increasing number of homes being built with very small gardens, but have just one standard garden bin size, which is 240 litres. For those with small gardens, this is difficult to store and would take a long time to fill, which is why in some other council areas, this is the largest garden bin size available. We also have the brown bags for garden waste, but again, for those with the smallest gardens, these disintegrate before they're full. I've had a resident raise with me that those with arthritis find these bags very hard to use. Other councils have services which better suit residents with small gardens. For example, Braintree District Council issues bins in 140 litre and 180 litre sizes, as well as a 240 litre garden bin for those with the largest gardens. What steps has Woking Borough Council taken to look at how we can best handle garden waste disposal for residents who have smaller gardens? Thank you.
And that's for Councillor Barr.
Thank you for your question, Rachel. I totally agree with you that and acknowledge that there are smaller gardens in the borough, especially in near developments. I will therefore undertake a feasibility assessment of smaller bins for the collection of garden waste over the winter period. And all being well, these will be rolled out in 22-23.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
I do. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Bath. I'm really pleased to hear that steps are now being taken on behalf of those who live in more modest homes. We know that residents who have arthritis have reported struggling with the green bags, which were introduced without consultation with residents. What steps will be taken in the process this time to consider residents who have medical conditions or disability?
Thank you for your question. Assisted help is available for those that need it, and all you got to do is ask.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Kerr, can you ask your question, please?
Thank you. Decentralising renewable energy generation is key to us decarbonising energy in order to reduce demand on the grid. More needs to be done, and we need to help residents install solar PV on their own properties. Many households don't have large amounts of disposable income, and it's quite daunting with many cowboy installers out there. Local authorities up and down the country have been working with an organisation called Solar Together. Solar Together is a group buying scheme for solar PV and battery storage. It helps make this technology more accessible and more affordable. Local authorities work with Solar Together to promote the scheme in the area. Homeowners register their interest, the company organises a reverse auction and installers are pre-vetted. Residents then get their personal recommendation and are asked if they wish to accept the recommendation or not. It's quite a simple thing to do to enable more of our residents to generate their own renewable energy. Will this council commit to enabling a scheme like this for our residents, please?
Thank you for your question, Sarah. And in short, subject to due diligence, the answer is yes. The council has been exploring the Solar Together scheme since June 2021 as an opportunity to encourage residents to install solar panels and solar batteries in their homes. Residents living in one of the participating council areas who own their own house can register for the Solar Together group buying scheme. This increases the bargaining power to ensure the most competitive offer from the pre-vetted suppliers available. The scheme also guarantees the quality of the suppliers as they have to go through a detailed assessment process. The scheme thus provides more affordable price for good quality installations, reduces energy bills and carbon emissions for residents taking part, while increasing the number of solar PVs across the borough. However, for the scheme to be viable, it must be delivered by partnering with other local authorities to achieve the demand needed to attract a suitable competitive offer from providers. Essentially, the scheme operates on a direct marketing approach to homeowners and requires in the region of 100,000 homeowners to be targeted to generate the take-up required. This means that to take advantage of the scheme, the council will need to work with other local authorities to achieve the critical mass to make the scheme viable. Officers are currently engaging with the Energy Hub and with our Berkshire neighbours to identify opportunities to collaborate and set up the scheme. There is significant interest in taking this forward, but it will take some time to align timescales and approve processes in each participating local authority. Over the last year, the council has been exploring other schemes that will help us address the challenge of future energy capacity, retrofitting and generating more renewable energy locally. To mention some, we've spoken with Lendology, a non-profit lender that works with homeowners to fund home repairs and improvements. We've also spoken with Retrofit Works. I've had initial conversations with an organisation called Rayleigh and another one called InRange, and we've also worked to set up the Community Energy Fund to support non-housing projects.
I'm sorry, Councillor Murray, you've run out of time. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you for saying that this is going to be taken forward. It'd be good to be kept updated with progress. Have you got any plans specifically for low-income homeowners that would like to look at reducing their energy costs through having their own renewable energy?
So we have a trial in place at the moment in one of the social houses across in Stuart Monroe's ward. Risley, thank you. That trial is ongoing at the moment. There are residents living in the house. We've installed solar PV, we've installed an air source heat pump and batteries, and we're using that as a test bed, and other authorities are interested in the trial results. We need the trial to run a little bit longer at the moment because we need to see how it impacts energy use over the winter and what the net impact of solar generated over the summer has to offset energy use over the winter. We are also looking at what we can do with the housing stock that we have. So, we have 2,500 owned houses across the borough, and we're looking at opportunities that we can use with them. And some of the organisations I've spoken to, Rayleigh in particular, have a scheme that's live at the moment, is particularly focused around housing stock that is for low-income families.
Thank you for that. Councillor Conway, I understand you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the Executive Member for Finance, and it asks him to provide the Council with details of the current shortfall in funding for Twyford's new library. At the Executive meeting on 30th of September, the item relating to the lease for the new library was pulled at the last minute on the grounds that rising costs necessitated a pause to review the budget. I would like to know how much the project costs are likely to exceed the already agreed budget, so I can better understand what needs to be done to address the problem.
Thank you, Councillor Conway. The budget agreed in the MTFP was £720,000, and the estimated cost of the work following the post-tender return update was just over £1 million. This represents an increase of almost 40%, which, as you know, is why the pause was introduced. As a responsible council, we take our financial management very seriously, as you and others no doubt would expect. I did say I would do all in my power to ensure that the council looked at the problem to enable early delivery of the license of library. And as a result, we are seeking to bridge the gap through value re-engineering and exploring income generation opportunities from the overall site, which you'll be glad to know does not involve the disposal of any of the council's assets. Quite the contrary, it will provide enhanced facilities for the residents of Twyford and deliver additional income to help provide and sustain the valuable asset which the new library will no doubt become. It is my intention the outcome of this work will be presented to the executive in January 2022 for consideration, which will also include the delivery of a suitable lease.
Do you have a supplementary, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do. I thank you very much for that answer, John. Will you agree to meet with me either face to face or via Teams to discuss some ideas I have for bridging the funding gap?
Yes, I'm quite happy to do that. The work is ongoing. I can assure you that we're almost there. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Mickelber, would you like to ask a question, please?
Thank you. My question is to the Executive Member for Highways and Transport. I wish to acknowledge the professionalism of our borough's civil parking enforcement team. They are a key part in the strategy to help manage parking and, crucially, in many locations, such as outside schools, to help make our streets safer. Some initiatives have helped to address parking-related safety issues. But all around the borough, serious problems continue. Regrettably, the often heard phrase, an accident waiting to happen, remains regrettably all too true in many locations. Could the executive member please outline the borough's strategies and tactics for tackling this issue, including timings for actions?
Thank you for your question, Andrew. It's a bit difficult to be specific because I'm not entirely clear of the locations being referred to here, but certainly I and the traffic management team and the road safety team would be very interested to hear of specific locations and problems. A lot of the problems are very, very specific to individual schools and individual roads. So if you could give us some actual examples, then we'll be delighted to dig into them and see what we can do to reduce the risk. We're aware of some issues with parking. As you say, we've been proactively trying to manage these and keep our children safe. I could also remind you that we can target our parking enforcement guys to particular areas. I recently targeted them at Hawkton School and Loddon School, for example, where were having problems with parking, which was causing a danger to children. Where if you can report these to us or to the parking enforcement guys, we'll be happy to adjust the schedule so that they can go and visit particular schools and particular risk areas. As you can appreciate, we have to depend on the expertise and experience of the officers, and as you said, they are very good, and that needs to be used to prioritise schemes. And we need to address those locations where there is a collision history first, before looking at others where others feel there may be one in future. There's plenty of things we can do. We can put in new parking restrictions. We've already done that around Loddon School recently. We put in some speed limiting chicanes around Hillside School. We've also put barriers in to stop children running in the road, but it's a very specific answer to very specific problems.
And do you have a supplementary, Councillor Mickelber?
Yes, thank you. And I certainly will get back to you with specific locations in early. And I appreciate, why that, why your answer does refer to the specificity, of a lot of the questions. But I am very interested in whether any of the following potential measures have actually been evaluated and decided upon. For instance, converting many of the current single and double yellow lines outside schools to no loading zones, taking effective action to significantly reduce the considerable length of time it still takes to get traffic regulation orders. This took about 2 years outside Loddon School. Any plans for the use of fixed and mobile CCTV cameras, such as those used in Reading, to identify offenders? Whether the pre-COVID trial to try to change behaviour with pavement parking is going to be followed up? Have any of these been evaluated and decided upon?
You've run out of time.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, quite a few of those have been addressed. We were about to trial fixed and mobile CCTV enforcement when COVID hit, and we'll be certainly picking it up as the pandemic passes. We had to stop it because we had to prioritise work in other areas. The TRO timescales have had a lot of work on them. We've set now a TRO timetable where the TROs will be done on a regular cadence, and restrictions will be put into the TRO that's next ready to go, rather than what was happening before, which was we were continually putting new things into a TRO and driving the timescale back. It's a much better process now. I haven't looked in detail at no loading, and I'll look at that and take that away. I think that was all you mentioned.
Thank you for the question and the answer. Councillor Fruin, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you. As members are aware, in the past 3 years, Shinfield has been subjected to significant development on what was a once semi-rural community. Some of the key routes are still on semi-rural roads, and others widely recognised as needing uplift due to significant safety concerns arising from increased traffic levels. As one example, in 2008, it was recognised that the junction between Church Lane and Basingstoke Road required uplift. It was approved some 6 years later in 2014. Those dates provided to me by officers. We are still waiting nearly 14 years. In my short time as a councillor, residents and councillors have been promised at least 4 dates for work to commence. Others tell me it is many more than this. All have been missed, the latest being summer 2021. This year, we are now being led to believe it may start in early 2022. But understandably, we have little trust in this. There are multiple other areas of highway safety concern, especially in the areas adjacent to our schools, Hyde End Lane being one prime example. My question is, when will this council give priority to the safety of Shinfield school children and other Shinfield residents by actually delivering what they promise when they promise?
Thank you for your question, Jim. The council takes the safety of all residents very seriously, particularly the vulnerable. However, there are no infrastructure improvements planned for Hyde End Lane. In the case of Church Lane, Basingstoke Road junction improvement, the council is not the deliverer for the work, as you know. It's down to Taylor Wimpey, and we have been pressing the developers to complete the works. We can't complete them. They need to be done by the person who's responsible for them. And unfortunately, you can't force developers to finish work at a particular time. So we're pressing them hard, understand the problem, but it's not really something we can do ourselves. Whilst as you said, there's been delays in progress following the compliance initiatives, the developer is due to award the contract next week for the work towards the end of this month for the scheme's delivery. The council is working with the developer to ensure planning obligations are completed, and we're expecting commencement as soon as possible. We'll be happy to apply pressure to secure compliance.
Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do, please. Thank you, Pauline. Given the direction of the local plan update, the trust in council delivering what we promise is important to all residents, especially Shinfield, where we are patiently waiting for developers to provide us with promised sports pitches and a supermarket. A supermarket that is so long overdue, it is now being rebranded and promised again under a different planning commission. So my question supplementary is, how will this council reassure all residents, and especially Shinfield residents, that what we promise during planning will be delivered?
Thank you, Jim. I can't really answer a question on planning. It's obviously a question for somebody else, but I can assure you that I'm very happy, as you know, to come with you and talk to residents. I've been talking to quite a lot of residents over the last few months in Shinfield, and I believe we've actually found some sensible solutions to some of the problems they've outlined. So I'm very happy to, again, come with you and meet residents to talk about any highways problems they've got and see what we can do to fix them.
I know you are, Pauline, and I thank you very much for all your help with those things you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Fruin, if some of those questions were related to planning, might I suggest you contact the executive member for planning, Councillor Smith. So the next on the list, Councillor Rachel Shepherd-Dubey.
Why were the 60 houses in Woodward Close, that's the numbers 1 to 58, and the 2 named houses, not included in the traffic modeling for the Winnish Relief Road when it was done for the Senn School, and the 83 houses also proposed by the council behind the school were not included either?
Thank you. Evening, Rochelle. I'm uncertain which of the 60 houses are referred to in the question, and I understand officers have been trying to get clarification from you by email. But in the absence of a response, I have the following comments regarding traffic modelling and the relationship with the consented and the emerging proposals. As every case must be considered on its own merits at the time of the application is determined, any necessary mitigation will be identified and addressed for the proposal at that time. Any future local plan proposals which are adopted as policy at the time an application is determined can only be factored in without showing predetermination, nor indeed would the details be fully known for any assessment to be made in any event. In a nutshell, the current time must consume its own smoke, and future remains speculation which cannot be addressed unless there is an adopted policy. The Winnish Relief Road and associated road projects have all been assessed in line with the adopted core strategy and any committed development at the time of assessment for planning. This is the benefit of having a local plan, as it allows assessments to consider allocation proposed and for the opportunity to assess traffic impacts on strategic scale rather than on a piecemeal basis. Following the executive decision on Friday associated with the emerging local plan, we can begin to consider the potential for proposed draft policy allocations in line with the emerging strategy. It is not possible until that information is available for us to consider, subject to confirmation through the plan making process.
You do realize that I'm asking about the traffic modeling, not necessarily the plan, and therefore it should have gone to highways, not to you. And just thought I'd mention that statement. But the other part, it would be appreciated if it was actually going to the right person rather than somebody else. Anyway, in case you were wondering, it's 1 to 58, as I told you, Woodward Close, and the 2 named houses are in the lower numbers of Woodward Close, and they were not included in that. I have a follow-up question as well, since it's you didn't answer my question, actually. Mr. Mayor, can I have a follow-up question?
You've got 22 seconds left to ask it.
Okay, quickly. Where are you planning on putting these houses? Since it's overwhelming all of the Winnish Relief Road roundabout, how are you planning on getting the people in and out of Woodward Close in the process?
Well done.
Can I just go back to the question, because the question that Rachel's asked isn't the question in the agenda.
I asked about traffic modeling. I didn't ask about the planning.
Well, the question is in this document is very different to the one you did ask.
It says here, why were 60 houses in Woodward Close not included in the traffic modeling for the Winnish Relief Road when it was done for the Senn School, and 83 homes proposed by the council behind the school? This is about the traffic modeling that I was promised in September, October, November last year and never received. And I finally found it in the, planning document there. So therefore, I'm asking about the traffic modeling that was done in there, not necessarily the planning on this.
Right. Well, that's what Chris Easton was trying to ascertain when he sent you an email trying to clarify this question. But in answer to your supplementary question, if any of your concerns, please raise them when we start the consultation next week. I presume you're referring to Winnish Farms, and they will be addressed by the officers.
Right. It would have been nice to be able to answer the question here.
I need to draw this to a close because we do have 2 more questions and we only have, I think, 8 minutes left. Councillor Firmager, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, my question is the executive member for Highways and Transport. At the junction of Sonning Lane and the A4, there have been recently a couple of bad accidents. Thankfully, no fatalities. This is a particularly dangerous road. Please can you advise the number of accidents there since the year 2000 on what safety measures can be taken? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Michael. A total of 17 personal injury accidents were reported by Thames Valley Police in the last 21 years, 4 of which involved serious injury, with the remaining 13 reported as slight injury. As the elected member for Sonning states, thankfully none have been resulted in a fatal injury. Road safety benefits are the result of consistent and formal appraisal coupled with targeted investment at those locations where interventions can make a difference. The formal appraisal of local safety schemes sites is based upon a period of the 5 most recent years of data and shows in this case only 1 serious injury collision was reported in 2016 and there have been none since. Consequently, this junction would not be in a location that would be prioritised as needing any specific intervention, with too few collisions to determine if an engineering intervention should be implemented. It's worth noting that the A4 Bath Road should not be regarded as a dangerous road. The section of the A4 in Wokingham between Reading and Maidenhead boundaries carries over 20,000 vehicles each day, including freight, commuter and leisure traffic, and yet saw the number of serious collisions more than halved in a recent 3-year study period from 2015 to 2018. The traffic safety on this section of this route within Wokingham is one of the most improved routes in the country. According to the 2020 report from the European Road Assessment Programme, EURAP, which undertakes annual crash risk mapping across the country's strategic and major roads. The reason for this improvement stems from a combination of minor improvement schemes and signing lining measures, as well as our highways maintenance activities, such as resurfacing and winter maintenance implemented in the study period. We will, of course, continue to monitor the safety record of this junction and prioritise it for a formal appraisal should the number of incidents increase significantly.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Grimger?
Yeah, I do with that one. It's just that one of the accidents, a young lad suffered a double broken leg. And I could probably say that's a pretty dangerous incident. That could have even have a life, well, not life-threatening, but life-changing event for that poor boy. So I don't really recognise that particularly. But what I want to try to do, maybe to slightly drag this out a little bit more on more of the road. Are you able to give any more details about number of accidents and measures taken for the rest of the A4, not just that particular junction there as well? Because it is, I mean, they're all kind of linked. I mean, Warren Road is another one. There are just so many of them. South Drive, there's just so many of them along that road, but which are potential death traps, really. Thank you.
I think, Michael, I haven't got that data to hand. I don't have accident statistics for the whole road, but I'll be happy to get them for you. I think what you've got to remember is that the volume of traffic on that road is very, very significant. And sometimes where roads feel unsafe because of the volume of traffic, they're actually in proportion to the amount of traffic safer than you might think. But I will certainly find the statistics for you. I'll ask officers to respond to you, and we can have a chat about any particular concerns you have following that.
Yeah, I certainly welcome that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. We can get the last question in. Councillor Akhtar, can you ask your question, please?
Thank you very much. My question is for the executive member for neighbourhoods and communities. Residents in my ward have been complaining of fireworks going off at unsociable hours. Last month, myself and a number of my residents were woken up at 3 a.m., I kid you not, by loud bangs going off, 3 a.m. What is the local authority doing to clamp down on this outrageous behaviour?
Thank you very much, Sam, for your question. In England and Wales, enforcement of firework law is split, with the enforcement for retail and wholesale storage, safety and prohibition of sale to minors fall into local authorities, and unreasonably late or child use of fireworks falling to the police. Fireworks usage should cease by 11 p.m. except for midnight on Guy Fawkes night, 1 a.m. for the night of the Chinese New Year, Diwali and New Year's Eve. Long-standing arrangements for dealing with antisocial behaviour by the council is currently restricted to weekly office hours, with little or no service available during the evening or at weekends, when antisocial behaviour more frequently occurs. From April 2022, the council will launch a 7-day-a-week ASB service, which will provide evening, weekend and bank holiday capacity for dealing with antisocial behaviour. The new service will enable a much more coordinated, prioritised and mutually supportive arrangement for issues of public concern, such as this, outside of office hours. I very much intend that the new service will be able to quickly respond and tackle a greater number of issues that are of concern to local people and in many cases bring about a speedier resolution.
Do you have a supplementary?
No.
Thank you. So that's the final question asked. We'll now move on to item 57, minutes of committee meetings and board matters. We've got 20 minutes here. Can I ask those in the chamber who wish to ask a question to raise their hands? Keep them up, please. Okay, and then can I ask anybody in the David Hicks room who wishes to raise a question? Can't see anybody. And I'm told there are 3 people who wish to ask questions who are currently on Teams. So I'm going to take a question from Teams first. So, Councillor G, would you like to ask your question, please? Remember, no supplementaries.
Thank you. During the full council meeting, this is a question for the executive member for Highways and Transport, Pauline Jorgensen. During the full council meeting on 19th of November 2020, I brought forward a motion for a comprehensive policy on A boards and other pavement obstructions, because in Wokingham Town Centre, which is predominantly Westcott Ward, there is a problem for pedestrians, especially users of wheelchairs and those with sight impairment. At that time, Councillor Jorgensen felt that the existing policy was adequate, but the council would expand that policy to include bollard covers. She stated that officers would put the amended policy out to public consultation to ensure that the views of groups representing disabled people, impacted residents and shopkeepers were captured, and any substantive issues with the current policy were addressed. It is now 1 year on, and despite several emails from one of my residents and from me, we are still none the wiser about what is being proposed. Please could Councillor Pauline Jorgensen advise when the new policy will be drafted, when it will be put out for consultation, and the proposed implementation date? Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I've seen the flurry of emails about this subject, and I need to ask the officers for a specific date for you. So I can't give you it now, but I will certainly give it you after the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm now going to move into David Hicks. Can I call on Councillor Sargent, please, to ask our question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question to Councillor Charles Margetts. At the HSOC, there was a report from David Birch and Matt Pope on adult services. Can you explain the huge savings achieved, and will they need to downgrade the service in order to achieve this?
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. Yes, you're correct. Basically, we have managed to make significant savings from Optilis over the last few years, totaling a sum of over £2.5 million, which has been returned to WBC. The answer, how's that been done? I've sat in this chamber before and explained the change of focus of our Optilis, which has taken place from aiming to 2 years ago for rapid growth and expansion. We've asked and pushed for a refocus instead on becoming a better provider, providing better care and better quality just to local residents. The result of that has been a renegotiation of the management contract with RBWM. The refocus of service has also led to less expenditure on things like marketing and management. We've also slimmed down the management structure of the service. So we've gone down from, for example, 3 boards controlling it down to one, which I think basically will actually improve the service by making it more nimble, more agile, quicker to respond and quicker to move forward things. So the answer to your question is I'd have absolute confidence that, you know, we can continue to make this level of savings going forward and that we can continue to improve the quality of what Optalis does.
Thank you. Can I call on Councillor Burgess, please, ask our question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for the Executive Member for Environment and Leisure. There's been a lot of disappointment amongst many of my residents and others actually with the heavily promoted so-called ice rink at Cantley Park in my ward. Many were expecting real ice I think just in general there was a lot of disappointment about the quality of what was provided. So can you ensure that residents who are unhappy with the quality of the rink and feel it wasn't what was advertised when they bought tickets are entitled to a refund?
Yes.
That's what I like, nice short and sharp. So into David Hicks again. Can I ask Imogen Shepherd-Debay to ask her question, please?
Good evening. I'm going to ask a question about Cantley as well. They've just been installed some new EV chargers in the car parking area at Cantley, and I'm told that they are only working during the times when the cafe is open. Can I ask, what is the point in an EV charger that's only open when the cafe is open, and is this going to get fixed?
Thank you very much for bringing that to my attention. I will certainly inquire and get back to you on that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I call on Councillor Rebecca Margetts, please, for her question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for Councillor Howe. At the executive meeting on the 28th of October, it was stated that the Oak Tree School was being delayed. Are you able to give me an update?
Thank you, Councillor Rebecca Margetts. I use your full name to differentiate you. In early August of this year, the Department of Education had indicated that the project for Oak Tree was on track to open in September 2022. Members may or may not be aware that the Oak Tree SEND School is a joint project with Reading to house 25 children from each borough, giving 50 in total, and has been some years in the planning. At the end of August, the DOE flagged that there could be a delay in opening, and on further investigation, we found out that it possibly could have been delayed until September 2023. It appears there were technical difficulties with planning, contractors, and procurement. The implications are that the children that are eligible for entry in September 2022 need to be accommodated elsewhere, and this is a statutory driven obligation. And also, once those children have been accommodated elsewhere, that's it for their school career. They can't just change back if Oak Tree becomes available again. Under the guise of Carol Camis, of course, I have to mention, we've kicked into action with officers and the leader and deputy leader in his role of finance, together with our opposite numbers at Reading, met with the DOE, and the mobilisation also involved efforts from our MPs, going right up to the Minister of Education, Nazim Zahawi. I hope I've got that right. The bottom line is that Oak Tree will not be open in September 2022. We've explored every possible application to get that, every possible avenue to get that done. It's now targeted to be handed over in Easter 2023, so that we will be ready for September 2023. We're in close discussions with the Department of Education to ensure delivery at that time, and we're also in discussion with them very closely for any consequential cost implications, and we're expecting full confirmation from the DOE before the end of November.
Thank you. Councillor David Hare.
Thank you. Bolton residents are concerned about the eventual site of the proposed mugger and the issues that need to be considered. They would appreciate being able to have input in a public consultation so that they know their concerns and expectations are understood in the planning application. What was that for?
Who was that for, Councillor Hare?
Harry Barr.
I didn't quite understand the question myself.
The Hawkwood residents are concerned about the eventual site of the proposed mugger in Early, and they want to say about the issues and so on. Could there be a public consultation before the planning application goes in, so that they know that they've had their say in where it is and that the issues concerned with it?
I'll certainly inquire and I'll get back to you on that one. Thank you. Councillor Shirley Boyd in the David Hicks room, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for Councillor Jurgensen and relates to the minutes of the executive on the 28th of October, more specifically the local bus service improvement plan. Under the heading of bus stop infrastructure, it states that WBC has a bus stop policy and that bus stops are given a bronze, silver or gold rating and will be upgraded in line with these standards when funding is available. I cannot locate a copy of the policy on the website, so I have no idea of the criteria for each level, but I would like to ask whether the bus stops which are managed by local parish and town councils have also been rated, and more importantly, when the aforementioned funding is available, will the many substandard bus stops in Woodley and Early be upgraded along with those in other parts of the borough? And I have a second part to the question, which is also to do with bus stops, if I may, which is that the new plan doesn't give any real priority to installing castle curbs, which enable those with mobility issues to easily access buses. In the transport plan of 2011-2016, the public transport plan, it was recognised that infrastructure and services do not always cater for residents with special needs or restricted mobility. And under the key objective 2 in that plan, there was a commitment to improve points of access to public transport network, e.g. castle curbs and bus shelters. Can you please reassure our disabled and elderly residents that this is still a key objective of the council? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Funnily enough, I asked the same thing when I read that particular bit of the BSIP as well, because there are a selection of bus shelters owned by the parish councils, and I'm not quite sure which ones are going to in future be maintained by the parish councils, which ones will be upgraded by whom. So that's a live question that's still out there at the moment. Regarding Kessel curbs, we have actually been upgrading quite a lot of bus stops so that there are Kessel curbs. That's one thing we did into one of the bus stops in Hillside a couple of years ago. So I would hope that all new bus stops will have Kessel curbs if that's possible, but I will make sure that that's made clear in the documentation, and I'll let you know one way or another.
Thank you. Now go to back into the chamber. So Councillor Caroline Smith.
Good evening. My question's to the Executive Member for Highways. Hillside School has had temporary chicanes in place which has successfully reduced cars speeding past the school on Rushy Way. So please, when are these temporary chicanes going to be replaced by more permanent ones? Thank you.
You're muted.
Managed to switch the camera on. I forgot to unmute myself. Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm glad you appreciate the chicanes that I worked with the school to get put in during the COVID issues because of the speeding and the problems the children were having in terms of crossing roads and that sort of thing. We're still looking at various other improvements that we can do to Hillside. in order to improve the crossings, and that will be one of the features of the permanent chicanes when they are put in. I haven't got a date yet, but I will get a date and I will respond to you.
Thank you. Councillor Rochelle, Shepherd to Bay in David Hicks. And please, can you restrict yourself?
I will make this very quick.
Just a question, please.
Okay, very quickly. Pauline, when are they going to fix the entrance into Woodward Close off the Reading Road? It's very hazardous at this point. I just drove over it today again, and you get a big bump at the end. Will you please fix it so we can actually not have an accident there?
Hi. Let me switch to both camera and the microphone on for a change. Yeah, I've been in communication with officers yesterday and today about this particular chicane. They're having a bit of difficulty designing hump. They're having a bit of difficulty designing it so that it ramps properly with the road, but that is actively under consideration at the moment. They've got an engineer looking at redesigning that particular area, and I certainly responded to a resident earlier. I think it was either late yesterday or early this morning. To say that was what was going on. I can't give you a date until they've finished the design.
Thank you. Councillor Akhtar, would you like to ask your question, please?
My question is for the Executive Member for Health, Wellbeing and Adult Services. At Health Overview Scrutiny Committee, there was a discussion about GP practice performance. What, if anything, are we doing and can we do about poor performance?
Thank you, Sam. Council may remember I spoke about this at the last meeting because it's something we're very much aware is of real interest to our residents and a real concern to some of them. GPs are under a lot of pressure at the moment. So, NHS figures will quote a 40% increase in demand since the pandemic has ended. But, when you look at the recent NHS patient survey based of the country, it combines with anecdotal evidence of what all members are telling me about GP performance across the borough. We have some GPs that are very good, and that's all credit to them, but we have 4 which are in the bottom 10% of the GPs across the country. One of which basically has been at the bottom for a long, long while. The performance for me of the Wokingham Medical Centre in particular is completely unacceptable. Loddon Vale, Twyford and Woos Hill also give cause for concern. In answer to your question about what we've actually been trying to do about it, myself and 2 of the senior officers from the department had a long meeting with the Wokingham Medical Centre earlier in the year, where there was lots of talk basically, but not much evidence of delivery. Following that, we wrote to the CCG to raise our concerns, got no response. Wrote to the Dr. James Kent, who's the head of the ICS, Bob, basically, and got a long letter back eventually offering lots of long promises, but no firm actual delivery date. So we raised it with our MPs, basically to try and get them to intervene on our behalf, and went back to Dr. James Kent, who's now written back, actually promising a meeting with me and the officers to actually raise this with him directly. I've also spoken to the other lead members, basically from Reading and West Berkshire, who share the same CCG and obviously share the same problem to a degree. And there's a joint letter which has been circulated, which we've all agreed to, going to the Dr. Kent next week, the head of the ICS, to actually push this matter further. So we're not going to give up on this, and we're not going to give in, and we're going to keep pushing this issue because we know it's a real concern to our residents. One thing I should make absolutely clear in conclusion is that GP performance is solely the responsibility of the CCG. It is something we can lobby on, but we have no direct control over. So all we will do is continue to raise concerns until we get some satisfactory answers.
Thank you. I think we can squeeze 2 more in. Councillor Loyes in David Hicks' room, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, all. My question is to Lead Member for Finance, Councillor John Kaiser. At the Community and Corporate Overview Scrutiny meeting on 6th of October, you stated that the adult social reform could place a 20 million burden on the council. Can you confirm this figure, and are there any other headwinds which the council is facing? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lloyd. At the risk of stepping on the feet of my colleague, I think you've left your microphone on. Thank you. The risk of stepping on the feet of my colleague, or I don't care. Basically, we have a situation where we have 1,700 people we have in care that we fully fund, but 87% of all the people in care adult care in the borough are self-funded. And as such, we will need to pick up any additional costs once the £85,000 limit has been breached. This was an increase in minimum wage for care workers. And let me just say, I fully support that, knowing what a job it is. But again, that will add to the costs. Finally, the levelling up suggestion by the government to make it fairer for self-funders. Depending on the amount of money from the new money that's been passed to the NHS and how much of that is passported to us, it could cost us between 17 and 20 million pounds. On the wider question with regards to headwinds, well, we've got a few hurricanes. We've basically got inflation running at higher than it's ever run since, in my memories, especially energy costs. We're going to see an increase of around about £600,000-700,000 for next year, and add to that increase in wages and also materials and NI payments. I mean, there are lots of things that we need to deal with. It makes it even more important that we are very prudent about the way we spend our money, and we maximise every penny that we receive from our shareholders, who are basically our funders as well, who are the residents. But that's the picture we're faced with at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. And the very final question, Councillor Dennis, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you. This is for the exec member of planning. The revised local plan update includes replacing the community borough building that currently holds the library with a number of housing units. Back in May 2017, when asked about this site, there were no plans for the loss of this public asset. So what has changed now to include this site as another housing development as opposed to a community resource?
In short, we're moving the library to a brand new building at Carnival Pool. So we've got a facility left. So the community is not losing anything. They're getting a brand new library.
Thank you. And that draws the minutes of committee meetings and members' questions to a closure. So I do understand that item 58 has been withdrawn. Can I just have confirmation? Yes.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Correct. Okay, so we'll go straight on to item 59. Statements by the leader, exec members and deputy exec members. So I can remind you that you cannot speak for more than 5 minutes. So hands up those who are going to be scheduled to speak. Okay. Councillor Munro, would you like to start, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to briefly give the people listening an update on where we are with regeneration in Woking Town Centre. I think it's come to a point where we need to take stock and look at where we're at and get some facts on the table. So I'm going to go through lettings and I'm going to go through where we are with our stock of houses that we built, and then some comment at the end about how well this has been received by the outside world. So as far as lettings are concerned, we're continuing to see several new businesses continuing to fit out and open in our town centre units. Our emphasis remains on a good mix of local independents to sit alongside quality nationals. A few come to mind in the last few months. Our Young Art Gallery in Elms Field, the Lazy Frog in Denmark Street, and the XG Fit, the town's first boutique boxing and fitness studio, due to open soon at Peach Place. We continue to see strong interest in remaining few units. We'll be announcing new names soon after the paperwork has been completed. We continue to use regeneration to help support the local community as well. So, for example, temporary lets to the Royal British Legion and to the Christmas Presents Community Project led by First Days Children Charity in Elms Field, and also Peach Place to be used for the Woking Winter Carnival stage and entertainment on Sunday the 28th of November. Despite tough conditions nationally over the last few years, the town centre continues to outperform many in the UK. Increased number of people working from home rather than commuting to London offers great opportunity to capture more of the local market share, growing footfall and eating out as people return to shopping and entertainment. low numbers of closures and primarily related to nationals rather than local and boutique shopping. Minimal vacant units and those which are empty have seen interest across the town, not just WBC, but privately owned ones as well. Regeneration currently has 91% let and on target to achieve 94 by spring of next year, the targets we set ourselves. This means we continue to cover the cost of delivering the regeneration, as well as generating a good return we can use to fund services for residents. Income will continue to rise as costs are paid back over the next 10 years or so. It's also a milestone because the asset value of the stock is far in excess of the loan. On residential sales, it's another good story, continuing to proceed well with prices generally meeting or exceeding predicted sales values, and 84% of the properties released to date exchanged and completed. All of this has been very well received in the outside world, receiving lots and lots of recognition, both locally and nationally, as I'll just mention a couple. A winner of the Rural Town Planning Institute Award for Excellence in Planning for a Successful Economy, Association of Public Sector Excellence, Best Housing Regeneration or New Build Initiative, Urban Land Initiative Award for Excellence, Mixed Use, Business Magazine's Thames Valley Property Award for Development in Peach Place, and Spaces, which is the Society for Public Architecture, Construction, Engineering and Surveying yearbook entry for Peach Place, Elmsfield. Elmsfield were going on to win the Spaces Regeneration Award last week. Finally, we've been approached by the Local Government Association to write a case study about the regeneration to share best practice with other councils. So, Mr. Mayor, this is clearly a highly successful programme for which you should be proud of, with more exciting developments to come, such as the Carnival Hut, which Councillor Smith mentioned earlier, which is looking very impressive and yet to be delivered on time by a very organised German organisation. Visiting the town centre and seeing all the restaurants and other retail business come to life means more than just the money and vibrancy of the place. The play park with mums and dads with their children confirms to me that it was the right decision to regenerate Wokingham Town. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Kaiser, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I spoke earlier in answer to Councillor Lloyd's question, I just wanted to touch on the finances of council. With other local councils getting into financial difficulties, it's important to give our residents in Wokingham Borough confidence that we are in a strong position and not at risk. Recent news on some local authorities, for example, Labour-led Slough, which has had to declare bankruptcy and are finding it impossible to make ends meet, with little chance this situation will change for the foreseeable future. Residents are naturally concerned. Could we go the same way? But the short and simple answer is no. How is it we're delivering more services, facilities, when other councils are closing swimming pools and libraries? We are opening new ones and providing better services, facilities such as Bournemouth, Countley, California Crossroads, a California Country Park, Lower Early and Arborfield Green. Too good to be true, I guess everybody will say. Let me explain how we do this. In fact, thanks to Conservative administration's careful budget monitoring, prudent borrowing and shrewd investments, our finances are among the soundest in the land. Even CIFA say that we're in the top 20 in the UK. How are we going to safeguard our financial future which is the cornerstone of being able to provide great services? Well, we regularly monitor and report on expenditure throughout the years and keep a close eye on expenditure. The first thing I did when I took this role was to insist the budget in all its glory went to overview and scrutiny before it's published in its final format, and over a long period, so over 6 months, so everybody could have their say. Last year, the budget came in slightly underspent, and even though it's been a very tough year, we are currently on track this year. Let me talk about debt. All local authorities must borrow if they want to forward fund things such as leisure centres, regenerated towns, solar farms and other improvements for the community. Even more important is to fund that infrastructure as and when we need it, such as roads and schools, rather than waiting for the money from the developer. My rules around borrowing money is quite clear. We must have a clear route to pay back, make commercial sense and deliver services and facilities to residents. I clearly understand we're not some company or commercial entity, but that does not mean we should abandon prudent fiscal controls, like I say, some councils seem to have done. The money we spent is the residents' money. As such, they are our shareholders. More importantly, they're also our funders. As such, we must deliver the service and environment that we all want to exist in Woking Borough. This means the key is to ensure you borrow, anything you borrow can be funded and paid back. The return on investment is backed by the asset and produced, in our case, the cost of the borrowing doesn't just offset the returns we are making, but the council-led council is generating revenue which can be reinvested in services. Without the money, we could not balance our budget and would have to cut these services. Our net debt, when you offset our internal borrowing investment, is around 140 million today, and the interest paid is less than 2% of the council's total income, all of which not only paid by the return of our investment, but it is forecast this year by March 22 that we will be generating over £30 for each taxpayer in this borough through our investments, nearly 3 times more than we did last year, all of which can be spent on vital services. In addition, we're looking to reduce our external debt by over £100 million at the same time, and we have reduced the cost of borrowings by nearly 1%. That's nearly a 40% decrease in our borrowing. The biggest threat to the council and the economy as a whole is inflation. As we see prices rising in all areas of life, we must keep pace, and there will be some tough decisions on pricing services we provide across the borough. We have relatively low costs compared with other councils. Car parks are a classic case where less than 1% of our income comes, and we have councils that surround us that collect over 10% of their income through. Now, we don't intend to go down that route. The last time we raised our car parking charges, 2017. Some councils, believe it or not, even raised their charges during last year, COVID. Can you believe that? That said, any increase in fees and charges will be measured and only designed to allow the council to keep pace with the costs. No doubt charges will be needed to respond to the massive increases we're seeing in energy prices, building costs, both labour and materials, as well as an increase in care and schooling. But even though we are considered to be the most prosperous area, we still have poverty. And it is our job to ensure the increases fall on those who can best afford to pay, as the only option is less services, which will fall on the old and the most vulnerable in the borough. We have strong reserves.
I'm sorry, you need to end there, Councillor Kaiser. You've run out of time.
Thank you.
Can I now call on Councillor Murray, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'm delighted to say that our new carbon neutral Dinton Pastures Activity Centre featured at COP26 last week on the LGA stand as an example of best practice sustainable construction for community use. I'm sure that every member will have seen recently the cost of energy has increased significantly. With this in mind, I wanted to update you on some of the vital and incredibly forward-thinking work of the Council's energy team concerning our climate emergency. As I've said before, our EcoFlex Help to Heat scheme has been a huge success for the Council. I'm very pleased to say that this year 968 homes have had either cavity wall installation, loft installation or both installed free of charge to the resident as a result of this fantastic scheme. These sites have all been made significantly more energy efficient as a result of this programme, reducing energy bills for the residents, providing real-time savings for families most likely to be impacted by the sharp rises in energy prices. Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you will agree that the foresight of our energy team should be applauded by this council and by the residents who have benefited so greatly from this free scheme. In the last 2 weeks, I visited schools in Woodley to see completed installations of new solar panels. By the end of this year, the energy team will have completed 13 additional solar PV installations across our borough's schools. Combined, they will generate well over 250,000 kilowatt hours of energy and will save a combined £52,000 a year in energy costs for those schools. That cost saving is money that goes directly back into the school's budget to be spent elsewhere, supporting the education of our borough's children. I should remind you also, Mr. Mayor, that these solar installations cost the schools nothing up front. So the school gets all the benefits of reduced energy costs and carbon savings without any of the upfront installation costs. Councillor Howe and I are both delighted with the success of this programme to date and have started discussions together on how we can accelerate it to other schools across the borough, including our academies. At Bulmer School, Woking Borough Council have upgraded an existing solar array, installing new panels that are capable of generating more than twice the electricity capacity from the same rooftop space. I'm sure you'll be interested to know that the previous panels haven't just been scrapped, they've been relocated to Dinton Pastures, where they will be used to provide power to the lake's aerator. Mr. Mayor, I'm also pleased to inform you that 21 schools have had LED low energy lighting systems installed this year by our energy team, and that the council's completed installation upgrades at 7 commercial sites. Turning to trees, Mr. Mayor, I'm very pleased to say that our 250,000 trees project officer has been appointed and started work. As part of her role, she will become the point of contact for town and parish councils as we look to identify additional sites for siting our trees. And I know she'll be contacting those councils directly in the coming weeks if she's not done so already. She will also manage our garden forest programme, where we are looking to site up to 10,000 trees with residents to plant in their own properties. As part of our tree planting initiative, you may have seen a consultation that has gone live using our new Engage Woking Borough platform. Already in use for a waste strategy consultation and the local plan update consultation, this new platform has been launched to create a more constant two-way dialogue with our community on many issues, has already seen several thousand residents sign up to engage. Finally, Mr. Mayor, you will have heard me say on numerous occasions that encouraging and the adoption of sustainable living behaviours in our residents is the most important thing that we can do as a council to combat climate change. With that in mind, on October 21st and 22nd, WBC held an open market engagement event where we invited businesses and individuals who are experts in behaviour change and sustainable living to come and pitch their ideas and tools to officers from across our council. I'm pleased to say that over 25 different pitches took place over 2 days from a variety of organisations, all proposing sustainable ideas relating to transport, energy reduction, waste reduction, active travel, food waste and consumption behaviours. Our officers are currently collating feedback and benchmarking scores from those pitches and will be arranging more detailed follow-up meetings to discuss opportunities in more detail shortly. This is a vital step in building sustainable living behaviours across our borough, and I'm grateful to all of the officers who made the time in their diaries to attend the 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, most of you will know that last week the executive approved the consultation for the revised growth local plan update, which starts next Monday and will run till the 24th of January. I wanted just to say a few things. We've set up a number of events that will start next week. We've got an event on Monday evening at St Crispin School, and then we've got an event in Arborfield the following week. We've also got 4 different virtual events, which already via our new Engage platform, as Councillor Murray was referring to, we've got 200 people registered for those events. Obviously, we're going to have to keep close attention to what happens with COVID and to make sure that we've got precautions in place. We are also going to be having a section outside in the reception area where we will have all the maps and all the information available for residents to come along. And also, if they go onto the Engage website, they can see when officers will be available to, well, be available to ask any questions or any points they want to pick up. Also, there are various routes to engage with our team. They can obviously engage through the online, or they can write to our team, or they can send us a letter. We very much hope that you can spread the word and ensure that we get as many people to come along to our events, if not virtual, in person, and give us their views on our plan. As I said, we start next week and it will run to the 24th of January, and we do hope that you come along and get involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parry, you've got 3 minutes left.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcomed your presence at the opening of our 2 brand new leisure facilities to benefit health and well-being of our residents. The 2 facilities that you helped open are the boxing hub at Peach Place and at Wokingham, and the synthetic skating rink at Cantley. The synthetic rink mimics the characteristics of real ice. It creates smooth and even surface for residents to skate on with low frictional resistance, resulting in an enjoyable skating experience for all. Residents of all ages had fun skating the afternoon away when it opened over a week ago and showing off their skating skills. And so far up to now, 2,750 tickets have been sold, and a couple of people that were expecting ice have been refunded. The state-of-the-art boxing ring, boxing hub will also be open to the public on 26th of November. The hub includes a training ring, storage rig with 3 fitness stations, a functional cube ring with attachments to up to 6 stations and punch bags, including aqua bags, heavy bags, and uppercut bags. This offers a range of fantastic boxing facilities available to everybody, whether you are looking for a one-to-one training membership, ad hoc classes or facility to hire. The brand new facility packs a punch and will be very popular with our community and to help them complement an active lifestyle. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So that finishes agenda item 59. We move on to agenda item 60, statements from council-owned companies. We've got 10 minutes for this, and no one can speak for more than 3 minutes. So hands up. We've got one. Councillor Jorgensen and Councillor Charles Margetts. Let's go straight in. Councillor Charles Margetts, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I spoke briefly earlier about Optalis. I thought it was time to give members a much more full update. When I first took on this role 2 years ago, it was clear that Optalis needed reform to make it suitable for the needs of the future and suitable for what the council actually wanted from it. I'm pleased to advise that following long discussions with RBWM, we've now reached agreement and signed a new contract to set Optalis up for future years. There have been some significant changes to the purpose and management structure of the company. I referred to some of these briefly earlier, but to cover the other ground, a reduction in management structure and bureaucracy to make decision-making quicker and easier, and also to give a stronger direct relationship with each local authority partner. Now, what this means is the 3 boards have gone to 1, as I said, and that 1 board consists of the CEO, the DAS from each authority, and the lead member. So for the first time, we have direct strategic control of the company. The refocus of Optalis, which I referred to earlier, basically onto quality rather than growth, the efficiency drive resulting in the saving of £2.5 million a year, and the other £2.5 million over the last 2 years, I should say. And the other thing basically is that Optalis Wokingham will now operate independently of Optalis RBWM. This allows the company the freedom to design services that meet the needs of Wokingham residents and greater flexibility. WBC set the following priorities for Optalis: to continue the transformation of services and to focus heavily on the retention and development of staff. And with the current situation, with the uncertainty over the government's adult social care proposals, which my colleague Councillor Kaiser referred to in a few minutes ago, that's most helpful basically to do that. From a Wokingham point of view, using Optalis to provide care gives certainty of ongoing costs over time and enables us to hedge against the uncertainty in terms of cost in the care sector. It also ensures that any surplus money can be returned to WBC rather than being used to pay for directors' bonuses or shining new offices. This enables us to plan financially more effectively for the future with greater confidence. Whilst this change has been underway, Optalis has maintained and improved the quality of care it offers. David Birch and his team continue to move forwards. An example of this recently is Wokingham coming first in the South East and second in the UK in the recent Adult Social Care Outcomes Framework. This measures the number of adults with learning disabilities who return to paid employment. The figure in Wokingham is over 3 times the national average, which is a real credit to the company and all the people who work there. And I'd like to thank the Supported Employment Service specifically for their work in this area. Mr. Mayor, in conclusion, I would say that we believe that Optalis is now well placed to continue its work and serve our residents. And I know there are some exciting new things which I will be able to talk about in the upcoming months, which are now being developed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Margetts. Councillor Jorgensen.
Thank you. As a company wholly owned by Woking Borough Council, Loddon Homes has two main objectives. One is to provide much needed affordable housing in the borough, and the second is to generate a financial return to the council. I believe Loddon Homes is an organisation that this council should be proud of. This evening I'll give you a bit of a snapshot firstly. We currently have 123 homes in our portfolio, with a further 19 due by the end of the financial year. The total asset value of these is in excess of £30 million. We receive an annual rental and service charge income of about £570,000, and we have a further pipeline of around 400 new homes over the next 4 years, supporting the delivery of the council's housing programme. Underpinning this is Loddon Homes' robust 5-year business plan, which is able to flex should Loddon's and the council's housing objectives change, as well as withstanding the scrutiny of our board and the housing regulator. The final version of the plan is expected in January. We have just completed a couple of months of exceptional delivery and performance by the company. We took ownership of the final homes at Arnott Avenue, marking the completion of the first phase of the Ghost Ride Regeneration. I recently met other members of the board and members of Ghost Ride Community Steering Group to have a tour of the completed shared ownership apartments, and I can attest to the exceptional quality and workmanship of the final build. Whilst I was there, I met residents who had already moved into their new home, and they could not speak more highly of the properties or of the service and support they received since moving in from both Loddon Homes and the developers, RJ Leafield and Sons. I'm pleased to report that 50% of all the shared ownership sales completed within a month of the properties being handed over. I'm also pleased to report that we have received the initial feedback from our biannual resident survey, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive, with 90% of residents being happy or very happy with the overall service they received from Loddon Homes, over 95% saying they would recommend us as a landlord, and 95% are happy with the quality of their home. We're only partway through the feedback, and the full results will be published in December. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That ends the statements from council-owned companies. Now we'll move into the motions. Can I remind everybody we have only got 30 minutes per motion, and a motion, if we only have 15 minutes left of the meeting, we will not be able to start a motion. So the first motion we have is motion 467, submitted by Ian Shenton. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Sarah Kerr. The proposer, do you wish to speak now, please, for 3 minutes?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Did you hear that? No? Oh, I didn't either. But somewhere, a species just became extinct. They don't make a noise, they just go. And there'll be at least one more going, silently, before the end of this meeting. The Smithsonian Institution in Washington estimates that in normal times, we lose approximately one species per million per annum. And given that their estimate is there are perhaps 8 million species on the planet, that would equate to 8 lost per annum. However, these are not normal times, and the Smithsonian estimates that the species loss rate at the moment is at least 1,000 times that, and maybe many more. In other words, at least one per hour. They're mostly not iconic species, like rhinos, but they are vital to the existence of some other species. And as this loss of species grows into a cascade, eventually one will be Homo sapiens. Because the 6th mass extinction is upon us, and we are in an ecological emergency. It's for that reason that I'm proposing tonight that this council goes beyond the ecological considerations that are currently incorporated in some of our activities, and declares an ecological emergency, as it already has declared a climate emergency, placing both equally at the heart of our future actions. In that way, in our small fragment of this planet, we can protect our existing biodiversity and potentially even increase it. Nobody will do it for us. The responsibility is ours, and we will not be forgiven by future generations if we fail to take that responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. I now wish to ask if there's anybody going to speak against this motion. Just clear, that's all we need. The seconder, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right, please. Thanks.
There's a surprise. Okay, can you hands up those who wish to speak on this motion? Can I also ask anybody who wishes to speak about this motion from David Hicks, please? And also anybody on Teams, put your hands up. Nobody in David Hicks and nobody on Teams. Okay, so I'm going to call Councillor Murray first.
Mr. Mayor, in accordance with the Constitution Rule 4.2.13.7, paragraph B.3, I would like to amend this motion to refer this matter, and I quote, to an appropriate body or individual for consideration or reconsideration, in this case to the Cross-Party Biodiversity Task and Finish Group. An amendment to this motion has been drafted and will be handed out.
While that's happening, do you have a seconder, please?
It will be seconded by Councillor Parry Bath.
Thank you. And I will be asking the proposer if you accept the amendment or not.
Once we've received it, would we be able to have an adjournment of 10 minutes so we can actually consider it, please?
You certainly can.
Thank you.
I probably have to vote for that, but as far as I'm concerned, that's fine. I'm just checking the rules. Yes, it needs to be posed a second, and then we need to vote on it for 10-minute adjournment.
Okay, I propose a 10-minute adjournment.
Okay. And Councillor Conway is seconding it, so we can. I'm giving people the opportunity to read it first before we do. I think they've been fully distributed now. So we've got a proposal to adjourn for 10 minutes. Can I see all those in favour, please show. And in David Hicks, please, can you show the adjournment? Okay, it's pretty unanimous. So by my reckoning, it's 21:29. So we'll adjourn for 10 minutes. Please be back. I will start promptly at 21:39. Thank you. Councillor G, do you want to, I understand you want to speak?
Yes, I'm just wondering about the people who are attending on Teams. I know I can't vote, but I'd really quite like to read the amendment.
Yes, we need, when we come back, all councillors, whether you're on Teams or not, will have the opportunity to speak. So I will be calling to identify people.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, that's not the question. The question is, I don't have the amendment.
Oh, okay. It's being sent around.
Thank you.
my next task is ask Councillor Shenton if he accepts the amendment or not. Thank you.
I do not accept the amendment.
Thank you. So we will now debate the amendment as we go forward. I'm just checking. Councillor Murray, would you like to make your statement, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I applaud Councillor Shenton for proposing this motion. I do not doubt that it was submitted with the best of intentions, with the best interest of our natural environment in mind. I share the ambition that more is done across our community to increase biodiversity and to proactively create habitat for wildlife across our towns and parishes. But while I support the intention, I believe this motion is premature, and I feel that our residents will be better served by referring this motion to the Task and Finish Group on Biodiversity to consider it in context of their recommendations. I would also add that in my area of responsibility, and in others, there is a significant amount of work already ongoing that deserves to be completed before we vote on a motion like this one. Allowing that work to be completed will better educate our debate and push our targets and objectives further than this motion does. To be specific, Mr. Mayor, I refer to targets 18, 19 and 20 of our Climate Emergency Action Plan, which commits our borough to developing a borough tree strategy, which as a direct consequence will increase wildlife habitat and therefore biodiversity. Writing policies to avoid the loss of established habitat and retain carbon stores, writing policies to retain and enhance biodiversity, particularly botanic diversity, across our borough to aid carbon sequestration. Design a guide to green and blue infrastructure, which will encourage the inclusion of low-intensity maintenance of habitat. Developing a local nature recovery strategy that covers the borough and will provide a 5% uplift in the number of biodiversity net gain. To leverage funding for habitat improvement, create wildlife habitat as part of a programme of restoration of natural flood management processes, implementing relevant elements of the Blue Heart campaign of grass management or grassland management. Reduce cutting cycles to improve grassland habitat and rewilding for over 200 hectares of land already identified as potential sites for this. Implement hedgerow restoration as work across a near 1,534 kilometres of hedgerow that we enjoy across Woking Borough, as well as adding additional kilometres of hedgerow, and planting 250,000 new trees, which will add more than an additional 150 hectares of woodland, including giving 10,000 to residents to plant at their own properties. In addition to this, Mr. Mayor, as part of the local plan update proposed by the Executive Member for Planning and Enforcement, 70 sites across the borough will be protected from future development as part of the local green space initiative, and supplementary planning guidance is being developed that will enshrine biodiversity net gain and tree planting and maintenance into our local planning legislation. I agree more needs to be done, but I say all of the things that I already have done, Mr. Mayor, for two reasons. Firstly, to point out that biodiversity and ecology are already included as part of the climate emergency, and therefore a separate emergency is superfluous. Although I will say here that...
Councillor Murray, you've run out of time, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The seconder wishes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree wholeheartedly with the sentiments expressed by Councillor Shenton in this motion. I too care deeply about the efforts to promote biodiversity, caring and fostering protection of our trees and wildlife. But I'm not in agreement with the timing of this motion. It is prematurely timed. Mr. Mayor, as every member is aware, the overview and scrutiny cross-party task and finished group chaired by Councillor Chris Bowring is beavering away in preparing a report to promote biodiversity and caring for the wildlife in our beautiful borough. The terms of reference for the task and finish group are wide-ranging. And I'd like to just concentrate on a few more facts that because of these wide-ranging terms of reference, we as a council are doing all our very best to promote biodiversity. And I'm assured that the report by Task and Finish Group will be available early next year. And I look forward to the recommendations being prepared by the Task and Finish Group. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm unable to support this motion due to its premature timing.
I therefore urge Councillor Shenton to withdraw this motion and patiently wait for the hard work, output and recommendations from cross-party task and finish group early in the new year. By doing so, we will avoid duplication and effort and save valuable resource and time. So let us all support the current excellent work of the task and finish group. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All those who wish to speak on this amendment, please raise your hand. Can I also ask David Hicks to gather names of people who wish to speak, and also on Teams, if you wish to speak on this amendment, please raise your hand via the Teams hand button. Okay, no, can't see anybody on Teams. I'm going to start off with Councillor Kerr.
Thank you very much. In the words of Greta, blah, blah, blah. You've just heard Councillor Shenton say that a species becomes extinct every minute. This is an emergency. Using Councillor Murray's example, you could argue that the council declaring a climate emergency may have been a bit premature, and it's actually now finding out what that really means. We don't have time to find out. In 2010, countries around the world united to create a 10-year plan, which has 20 targets. It's known as the Aichi biodiversity targets. This expired in 2020, and the UK failed on 17 of 20 of those targets and has actually gone backwards in 6 of them. The scientists have developed a biodiversity intactness index, which rates nations for how well their ecosystems have kept their natural diversity of animals, plants and fungi. Scientists consider biodiversity intactness of 90% average to be a safe limit for ensuring the planet does not tip into an ecological recession that could result in widespread starvation. On this scale, the UK's index reading is 53%. The UK has lost more biodiversity than any of the G7 countries and is in the worst 10% globally. We do not have time to send this to another committee, another talking shop, where there's no commitment to actually do anything. There are some actions this council is doing around protecting nature. I'll give you that, but nowhere near enough. If it were, we wouldn't be presenting this motion. Actions that are in the Climate Emergency Action Plan are there for the purposes of reducing our carbon emissions, and that is how their success is measured, not for replenishing nature that is rapidly being depleted. Some measures being taken for the climate emergency will benefit nature. Some, though, will be detrimental, and most won't consider what is required to improve nature. Nature needs its own action plan. Now, the council actually has a biodiversity action plan that is sitting on a shelf collecting dust. Many of these actions are not happening. Some of the actions in the motion are to reinstate some of the work that's been done. Some of it does reflect the Environment Bill and some of it goes far beyond. We need to acknowledge and act upon the dual threat posed to us by both the climate emergency and the ecological emergency, and acting on one of these alone does not cut it. We cannot wait any longer. This has been done in conjunction with the Wildlife Trust, who are prepared to work with us on this. A lot of research has been done, a lot of best practice from local authorities, and just to kick this into the long grass and have no form of commitment is just completely inadequate and quite disgraceful, quite frankly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Angus Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion has a long and wide-ranging list of actions proposed, which do really need careful consideration of how they can be taken forward. Now, I hear what Councillor Kerr says, and just by passing this motion in itself does not do anything. And we have to move in a way that we all our efforts within the council and with all our partners can agree the best way to do it. Now, the various bits here obviously have a lot going for them. The next motion backs up our interest in trees. I sit on the Berkshire Local Nature Partnership, and I know they are working with this council on our nature recovery network. The biodiversity task and finish group has been launched. We do need to move on these. We do need to move fast. But the right place to consider all these points raised by Councillor Shenton in this council meeting is not the right place to either debate or get the detail going. I'm sorry that the amendment was not accepted. I'm fully behind where we need to go. I understand where we need to go, but it's how we do it and how we confirm these actions that will make that big difference that I know this council can make.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've heard already tonight just how pressing this issue is. Biodiversity is declining faster than it has at any other time in human history. Nearly half of Britain's biodiversity has been lost since the Industrial Revolution. A recent study showed that Britain has lost more of its natural biodiversity than almost anywhere else in Western Europe. So even more important that we do our bit in Wokingham to protect and enhance biodiversity in our area, and we in the Labour Group wholeheartedly support the original motion unamended. While the climate emergency and loss of biodiversity are intrinsically linked, they are separate issues, and it is right that they are not conflated. I know that the Conservatives are aware how important it is politically to make noises about biodiversity. In my ward of Norwich, they misleadingly suggested that a new road at Ashridge Farm would lead to a net increase in biodiversity. The ecological report accompanying the planning documents for this road made it absolutely clear that no net increase in biodiversity could be claimed for the road. Absolutely clear. Yet if you look at the press release about this new road, the Conservatives talked about biodiversity in another scheme at the same time as discussing the road, in order to mislead readers and suggest that the road itself enhanced biodiversity, which it clearly is not true. So I know firsthand that we cannot trust any claims the Conservatives make on biodiversity. That is why we need concrete actions, such as those described in the original motion. We need to make a clear commitment and should do that tonight. It's disappointing that the Conservatives apparently cannot make that commitment, and I will not be supporting this amendment.
Thank you. We've got 3 minutes left before the 30 minutes up. I'm going to call Councillor Conway, and then we're going to have to go straight to the vote on the amendment, whether it becomes substantive or not, and straight to the vote on what's ended. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Prematurity, the argument of the procrastinator. I'm afraid the procrastinator's argument is what we've heard a lot from the Conservative side this evening on this motion. I can only think of two logical explanations for the reason they've embraced this procrastinator's argument. The first is they don't actually want to proceed along these lines, and I notice their amendment does not formally commit them to doing so. So this is quite possibly an attempt, as Sarah said, to kick this into the long grass where the Conservatives wish it to remain. The second possible explanation is that they cannot bring themselves to support a motion proposed by the opposition. I'm afraid we regularly hear from the Conservative side how much they want to see cross-party working. What does that mean in practice? It means you support us, but we don't support you. Whenever you propose a motion, we will either amend it or vote against it. When you propose motions, we try to find reasons to support it. I'm afraid there isn't much reciprocity here. So I'm afraid I totally reject this proposed amendment. I think it is not intended to be helpful, and I hope councillors of all parties will vote against it.
Thank you, Councillor Conway. I've just had an item on the Constitution drawn to my attention. I think we haven't been here before, so it's all new. Councillor Shenton, you do have a right of reply. Then we'll go for a vote on the amendment and then a vote on what is the substantive motion afterwards. Thank you.
I think, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Conway said more or less what I would say, but every day that there's a delay in doing something is another 30, 50, 100 species gone. Not necessarily from Wokingham, but that's the reality. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We will now move to the vote on the amendment, as you've all had. This will be a named vote again. So Susan will call out your name and please respond.
For, against, or abstentions. So Sam Akhtar.
For.
Keith Baker.
Abstain.
Paribas,
For.
Rachel Bishop-Firth,
Against.
Laura Blumenthal, Chris Bowering,
For.
Shirley Boyd,
Against.
Rachel Burgess,
Against.
Anne Chadwick, Jenny Cheng,
For.
Stephen Conway,
Against.
Phil Cunnington,
For.
Peter Dennis,
Against.
Lindsay Ferris,
Against.
Michael Firminger,
For.
Paul Fishwick,
Against.
Jim Pruin,
Against.
John Halsall,
For.
David Hare,
Against.
Pauline Hellier-Simons,
For.
Graham Howe,
For.
Clive Jones,
Against.
John Kaiser,
For.
Norman Jorgensen,
For.
Sarah Kerr,
Against.
Abdul Loys,
For.
Tahir Meher,
Against.
Morag Malvern,
Against.
Charles Magetts,
For.
Rebecca Magetts,
For.
Adrian Mather,
Against.
Andrew Mickleborough,
Against.
Stuart Monroe,
For.
Gregor Murray,
For.
Barry Patman,
For.
Jackie Rance,
For.
Angus Ross,
For.
Daniel Sargent,
For.
Ian Shenton,
Against.
Imogen Shepherd-Debay,
Against.
Rochelle Shepherd-Debay,
Against.
Caroline Smith,
Against.
Chris Smith,
For the amendment.
Wayne Smith,
For.
Bill Soame,
For.
Alison Swaddle,
For.
and the amendment is agreed.
Okay, so the amendment now becomes the substantive motion. And Anne, we have to re-vote again. We don't need to. Oh, good. So Democratic Services have advised me that because we can't have a further debate on the new substantive motion, we don't have to re-vote. And so that vote stands. Thank you. So we'll now move on to
Mr. Mayor, if there had been a vote, the Liberal Democrat group would have been abstaining. Can that be recorded in the minutes?
okay.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Same point from the Labour group, please.
Okay. To be fair, Councillor Fruin, do you want to make any indication?
I, as the independent, we would vote for.
I'm genuinely confused about what I'm being asked for.
On what, the original motion, or? We're voting for the amended version. Yeah, thank you.
And it has been pointed out, if members want to have a revote, we can do that, but thank you. So we now move on to motion 61.2, sorry, 468, with Councillor Murray. Do you have a seconder, please?
Councillor Angus Ross.
Okay. Councillor Angus Ross, do you want to speak now or reserve?
I'll reserve my position,
Right.
Mayor.
Councillor Murray.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, the Tree Cities of the World programme was brought to my attention by the members of Woking District Veteran Tree Association, and I'm very grateful to them for doing so. This magnificent programme recognises a commitment to tree planting and maintenance already adopted by some of the most famous and most beautiful cities and communities on earth. Cities like Madrid, Auckland and Wellington in New Zealand, San Francisco, New York, Washington, DC, Paris and Milan. From building community engagement and honouring all those who have dedicated so much of their time to tree planting and tree maintenance, to the improvement of beauty of our streets, towns and environment, the benefit of the Tree Cities of the World programme and a commitment to tree planting and maintenance is obvious to all who look. There are 5 conditions for achieving Tree Cities of the World status, and interestingly, Mr. Mayor, when I looked at them, we were already doing 3 of them. One of them was a work in progress, and as a result, there was actually only one of the 5 conditions that we weren't doing in any way, shape or form. To achieve Tree City status, we need to establish ownership, and that means having somebody within the Borough Council who's responsible for the care and planting of trees. We already have this. The second standard is to set some really clear rules in relation to tree planting and ongoing tree maintenance. This, Mr. Mayor, is our tree strategy, a work currently in progress, but not yet completed by the council officers. We will need to complete this piece of work before we can formally apply for Tree Cities of the World status. This includes a detailed ongoing maintenance programme, which is essential to ensure our trees thrive. The third condition is to know what trees we have. There is already work underway by the Woking District Veteran Tree Association, and as a council agreed, council already know to an extent what our tree population is. This is also a great opportunity to engage our community and our residents in our climate emergency. We know from the popularity of programmes like Spring Watch that there is an army of people across the country who are interested in undertaking projects like this, and we need to harness that within our community in order to be able to understand what types of trees we have and where. Imagine our residents out in their streets counting the number of trees and types of trees that exist and mapping them using iTree or one of the similar products currently available. The fourth condition is to allocate resources. As a part of our plan to plant 250,000 trees over the next decade, we are doing exactly that. We are committing resources and committing budget to the planting and to the ongoing maintenance of trees across our borough. The final condition is to celebrate the achievement. This is something that we don't do at the moment, but going forward is something that we should be proud to celebrate. We will acknowledge and celebrate the citizens, staff members, charities, communities and organisations who help deliver against our tree planting commitments and against the ongoing maintenance of our tree population. Added to these conditions is a commitment by the council to plant a COVID memorial wood. A site for this has not yet been identified, but I know that this is an initiative that will be welcomed by members of all parties. At our last meeting,
Councillor Murray.
Sorry,
Guess what? You've run out of time.
Always.
Right, so the next step is to ask if there are any speakers. Sorry.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I would like to invoke Standing Order 4.2.12M and ask the council to agree to extend this meeting for 30 minutes, as it looks unlikely that we're going to be able to get through all of the motions otherwise.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you. So the proposal is to add the extra 30 minutes on. All those in favour, please show. You can also, in the David Hicks, please indicate. And nothing on. Okay. Those against, please show. I am aware this should have been a recorded vote, but I'm trying to speed things up. Not carried, I'm afraid. So we will be ending at 10:30. So I'll come back to what I was going to ask. Is there anybody who wishes to speak against this motion? Please raise their hands. Nope. Anything in David Hicks at all? No, and no one on Teams. So in that case, we go straight to the vote. Do I get the second? No, go straight to the vote. Straight to the vote. Okay, and this will be a recorded vote.
Mr. Mayor, does the seconder not get a chance to vote?
Sorry, not. They can vote, but they can't speak.
This is for, against, or abstention. Sam Akhtar.
For.
Keith Baker.
Abstain.
Harry Bath.
For.
Rachel Bishop-Firth. For. Laura Blumenthal. Chris Bowring.
For.
Shirley Boyd.
Is it me?
Yeah.
Oh, 4.
Rachel Burgess. For. Anne Chadwick. Jenny Cheng.
Against.
Stephen Conway.
For.
Bill Cunnington.
For. I'm still trying to get my balance.
Peter Dennis.
For.
Lindsay Ferris.
For.
Michael Firmager.
For.
Paul Fishwick.
For.
Jim Proin.
For.
John Halsall.
For.
David Hare.
For.
Pauline Hellier-Simons.
For.
Graham Howe.
For.
Clive Jones.
For.
Norman Jorgensen.
For.
John Kaiser.
For.
Sarah Kerr.
For.
Abdul Loys.
For.
Tahir Maher.
For.
Maura Malvern. Charles Magetz.
For.
Rebecca Magetz.
For.
Adrian Mather.
For.
Andrew Mickelberg.
For.
Stuart Monroe.
For.
Gregor Murray.
After a year, very proudly for.
Barry Patman.
For.
Jackie Rannis.
For.
Angus Ross.
For.
Daniel Sargent.
For.
Ian Shenton.
For.
Imogen Shepherd-Debay.
For.
Rochelle Shepherd-Debay.
For.
Caroline Smith.
For.
Chris Smith.
Mr. Mayor, I was trying to indicate from the David Hare room that I wish to speak on this motion, but I was not allowed. I'd like that recorded in the minutes, but I am in favour of the motion. However, I would have liked some debate on it due to the sheer importance of this motion, and I'd like this recorded in the minutes. Thank you.
Unfortunately, Councillor Smith, the Constitution, if no one wishes to speak against, I did ask from the David Hicks, and you've just voted for, so I'm just confused.
But due to COVID and the fact I didn't have my laptop, I didn't have the Constitution in front of me to clarify on that point, and therefore this had moved rather too quickly to enable me to have the discussion and understand where we were. We've all been flexible during COVID, and I would just have appreciated some time in this manner to clarify what the rules were. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, your comments have been noted, and apologies.
Wayne Smith.
For.
Bill Soane.
For.
Alison Swaddle.
For.
Clearly carried.
Excuse me, that was clearly carried. So it's 2209, so we can now start the next motion, 469, but we will only have 21 minutes to carry out this debate. So, Councillor Hare, do you have a seconder, please? All right, Councillor Jones. Proposer, Councillor Hare, would you like to speak for 3 minutes, please?
Thank you. Having asked the Tories to second this motion, just last Tuesday I got eventually a reply from John Horsell asking me to withdraw it, as he said the council equality agenda covered it all. But white ribbon accreditation will give Woking Borough Council the opportunity to lead the way as a positive role model for men and boys. Public sector bodies achieving white ribbon accreditation are able to demonstrate they're meeting the public sector equality duty under the Equality Act 2010. This being the case, I'm not sure why he's worried. If it's all old hat, he can skip through this quite rapidly. The truth is that often women can't get away from violence from men at work, in a controlling marriage, with family, or with total strangers. As a man, I feel reasonably safe walking the dog at night. I used to leave my wife Nicola to do that, but then I realised how selfish I was, expecting her to go out in the increasing dark. And I'm sure that all of us men have, in some way, worried, concerned, scared or manipulated women by our actions, speech or gestures. Many of this, I know, have done this unintentionally, but ignorance is no excuse in the law. This motion seeks to help us as members to lead people, especially men and boys, in ending violence that is physical, verbal, sexual, emotional, financial and spiritual violence against women. We need to take our place in stopping this violence when we hear or see it, not to stand by and let things drift on, but being active in changing the shape of society for the better. As a council, we need to join White Ribbon and sign up to the Our Street Now campaign to rid our borough of this harassment. We need to start to address the underlying misogyny in our society that creates an environment where violence against women is normalised and accepted. Can each of us claim to be ambassadors for the protection of women who suffer different types of abuse, often every day? Are we people who confront wrong in ourselves and others, that women might feel safer doing things that we as men take for granted? Can we join?
Councillor Hare, Councillor Hare, you've unfortunately run out of time. Thank you. So is there anyone in the room and in David Hicks that wishes to speak against the motion? I only need one, so we will continue. Seconder, do you wish to reserve your right or speak now?
I'll speak now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I cannot for 1 minute believe that any member of this council can vote against this motion. It is very clear to me that a change in attitude towards women is necessary. Why should a female walking down the street feel uncomfortable? Why should a female cycling to work feel uncomfortable? Why should they be the subject of whistles, of shouts, of lewd comments? It's not funny. It's not a joke. Ask any female. It's a female who gets thrown out. Sorry. Is it right that if you push someone away when you're in a bar or a nightclub because of inappropriate behaviour, that it's the female who gets thrown out? Is that right? Of course it isn't. When my daughters were young teenagers, if they were walking alone, we would encourage them to call us. Chatting to us made them feel safer and deterred males from harassing them. Not all parents are able to do this. 15 years on, we still do it. I'm no longer at the top of the phone list, but we shouldn't have to do this. Street harassment is an issue for women. Even in broad daylight, they are abused by men, usually young men, from the safety of their cars or their vans. Very brave boys who can escape quickly if they're challenged. This council can do something to help women. We can seek changes to the law. We must speak up for women and help schools develop strategies to prevent public sexual harassment. We have to help changes in attitudes. It's our job to do this. It's one of the reasons that we have been sent here. I hope that all councillors see the benefit of Wokingham Borough Council being a white ribbon accredited organisation. It will show we have a positive, safe organisational culture. We'll have a staff who are knowledgeable and skillful in recognising and addressing violence and abusive and sexist behaviour against women. It will raise awareness amongst staff, helping them to be positive role models. It can improve the experience of customers and stakeholders and influence wider societal change to help end violence against women. I strongly urge all councillors in this chamber and in the David Hicks room to vote for this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I believe there's an amendment being proposed.
In accordance to Constitution Rule 4.2.13.7, paragraph B, line 3, that we can refer the matter to an appropriate body, in this case, the appropriate body being the Cross-Party Equalities Working Group. The handout is available, it can be circulated now.
Please note, we've only got 13 minutes left.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hare, do you need an adjournment?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Hare, do you accept the amendment?
No, I do not. We chose equality. This is again the Hicks long grass, and it's something that we need to do now.
Point of order, why is he getting two speeches?
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Hare. Laura, have you got a seconder, please? Councillor Swaddle. Would the proposer of the amendment please like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally agree with the spirit of the motion. This council is committed to doing everything it can to protect its residents from violence and harassment. And this includes educating staff and councillors on speaking out when witnessing abuse. And that's exactly what this council is doing. Our equalities team is currently designing training to support staff and councillors and being an effective ally if they're a bystander to harassment and discrimination. And this goes further than only addressing aggression towards women and girls and extends to all the 9 protected characteristics under the Equality Act 2010.
The Cross-Party Equalities Working Group will scrutinise the proposed training in January 2022. This is the reason for the amendment to the motion, as the Equalities Working Group will be considering training and awareness raising, similar to what White Ribbon supports. And we can scrutinise it all together and see whether we need elements of what White Ribbon offers to supplement the work already being done by this council without risk of duplication. This is the proper context to discuss it. It is simply too early to decide to sign up to White Ribbon accreditation tonight. The Cross-Party Equalities Working Group is the ideal place for the proposed actions of the motion to be considered. It should also be noted that the government's Tackling Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, published in July this year, has a commitment to ensure police and prosecutors are confident in responding to public sexual harassment. And this includes plans for the College Policing to provide new guidance for police officers on public sexual harassment, and the Crown Prosecution Service to update legal guidance to add specific information on the issue. On page 70 of the strategy, it also says how the government is already exploring creating a specific offence for public sexual harassment to see how this could address gaps in existing legislation. This council is also planning to launch its new domestic violence strategy early in the new year, and will be recruiting a new domestic violence specialist in its housing department. But we know we can do more, and we are committed to doing so. To avoid duplication, it's best for the asks of the White Ribbon motion to be reviewed by the Cross-Party Equalities Working Group. Then we can see how thorough the council's proposed new training is and whether there are any gaps that organisations such as White Ribbon can help us with. Indeed, there are lots of external organisations that do great work in this area. We need to ensure that we work with the right ones and spend taxpayers' money where due diligence has been done. I reiterate that I agree with the spirit that the motion is intended. It's just common sense for it to be properly scrutinised by a cross-party working group, just looking at very similar allyship and bystander training and awareness raising in just 2 months' time. That's the ideal forum, and it's simply not responsible to pledge taxpayers' money for an external organisation's accreditation that may duplicate what the council's own equalities team is working on. Therefore, I'd ask that the amended motion is supported.
Thank you. We've got 9 minutes left. Does the seconder wish to speak now or reserve their right?
I'll reserve my right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, who wishes to speak? Can you also, so I can see at least one person in David Hicks. There's one person on the, so we do have speakers. When we reach 10:30, that is the end of any debate. We go straight to the vote. No one has a right to reply. No one seconder doesn't have a right, etc., as per the Constitution. Can I call Councillor Rebecca Margetts, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a significant issue which runs way beyond the boundaries of Woking. An Ofsted review into sexual harassment in schools and colleges in June 21 found sexual harassment has become so frequent that it has become commonplace. As an example, 92% of girls and 74% of boys stated that sexual name calling happens a lot to them directly and their peers. I am the governor responsible for safeguarding at my local primary school in Finchampstead, and I have first-hand experience of this subject. I can state that safeguarding procedures are robust within the school. Safeguarding of our children is on the agenda at every governor's meeting. Reports of any sexual harassment are now to be reported by the head teacher to all governors. 11 of our 12 secondary schools in Woking Borough are academies, which means they set their own policies. The Department for Education issued Keeping Children Safe in Education in September 2021. This is statutory guidance that all our schools and colleges must adhere to. A specific section is identified for peer-on-peer abuse or child-on-child. All staff should be aware that children can abuse other children. It states that all staff must understand the importance of challenging inappropriate behaviours between peers. Downplaying certain behaviours, for example, dismissing sexual harassment as just banter, just having a laugh, part of growing up, or being boys, can lead to a culture of unacceptable behaviours, an unsafe environment for children, and the worst case scenario, a culture that normalises abuse, leading to children accepting it as normal and not coming forward to report it. All staff should be clear as to the school or college's policies and procedures in regard to peer-on-peer abuse and the important role that they have to play in preventing it and responding where they believe a child may be at risk of it. The council will further engage with schools on this issue and the need for schools to accept responsibility in implementing policy and procedure to meet the statutory guidance from the Department of Education. I agree wholeheartedly with the intention of this motion, but do not feel that it goes far enough. We should look as a council as a whole as how we support all individuals who are suffering any kind of harassment. Therefore, at this time, I would ask for you to support the amendment. We should support all individuals who experience sexual harassment across the borough, but by proposing that more ambitious and thorough recommendations be brought to council to debate and vote on at a later date.
Thank you. Councillor Burgess.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm appalled and I'm frankly astonished that the Conservatives are not wholeheartedly supporting this motion unamended this evening. Male violence against women happens on a scale. What can begin with sexist jokes, so-called banter, street catcalls, harassment that many of us have sadly encountered can end with serious violence. It seems to be clear that Conservatives do not understand this or the importance of it. Have they learned nothing from the dreadful murder of Sarah Everard by a man whose behaviour began with sexist conduct but ended horrifically in murder? And the appalling response after the event, as women were advised to flag down a bus if they didn't feel safe with a male police officer. It's not a women's problem. It's not up to women to keep themselves safe. It's not up to women to change their behaviour. But so often the response to male violence is that women should change. It has to stop now. All men can help to prevent violence against women by speaking out against poor behaviour, by not tolerating it, by calling it out now. And the fact that the Conservatives are denying to support White Ribbon this evening unreservedly and refusing to support action against street harassment now is frankly insulting. It just shows how committed the Conservatives are really to the equalities agenda. To finish, I would just like to ask the Conservatives that are refusing to support this wholeheartedly this evening, basically kicking the can down the road on this, what do I tell my 12-year-old daughter about how much this Conservative council values her right to be safe, her right to feel safe, her right to be free of male harassment or worse on our streets?
Thank you. Councillor Sarah Kerr, please, you just get in.
Thank you. I echo what Rachel just said there. This is like the previous amendment, procrastination, no commitment. And in the intervening period, more women and girls are going to suffer as a result of this. Almost every woman at this meeting tonight will have survived from some form of sexual harassment or assault. For some of us, it has been multiple occasions. It is such a widespread daily occurrence that it's rare to find a woman who hasn't experienced some kind of sexual harassment or assault. We are not saying that men don't get attacked. What we're saying is that women and girls are disproportionately the victims of violence because they are women and girls. I should be able to go out in an evening and not have my drink spiked. I should be able to walk through the town and not have to hide in a shop until the stalker stops stalking me. And I should be able to go away on a business trip and not have my boss try and rape me. Those are three real things that have happened to me, by the way. Violence towards women and girls stems from the misogynistic culture that is prevalent in our society, which has been normalised. Men who kill women do not suddenly kill women. They work up to it. There is a direct correlation between the normalised objectification of women and girls and the harassment and violence we are subjected to. We too easily, as a society, brush off the catcalling, the lewd gestures, the inappropriate comments about how we look, the sexist jokes. We've normalised this and it must stop now, not once it's gone to some talking shop. I'm really pleased that the council is developing bystander and allyship training, and it is a positive step forward, but it barely scratches the surface of what needs to be done. The council has adopted an equalities plan which doesn't mention women or girls in it even once. The three priorities focus on listening to and learning from our communities, acting on our commitments, and building a diverse and engaged workforce where everyone is respected. What we're asking is that you listen and learn, act on those commitments and engage as you've promised, and set an example as Councillor Halsall said we would. Please act now on these promises. We're asking you raise awareness and lobby government to make street harassment a specific crime. You can vote for that tonight. that you work with schools to set up specific policies in education and PSHE specifically on this. You can vote for that tonight. And that this council seeks white ribbon accreditation, which goes far beyond what this council is already doing. If you genuinely care about ending violence against women and girls, voting against the amendment and for the original motion allows the local authority to be a proactive role model. As you decide which way you're going to vote, think about your female colleagues, your mothers, your wives, your sisters, your daughters, your granddaughters. Vote against this amendment for them and vote for the original motion. Thank you. And I just want to say I'm so angry at you, really angry.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. It's now 10:30, so we need to go to the vote. It is going to be a named vote again. So Susan will call out your names and we'll do the normal vote. Thank you. This is a vote on the amendment to become the substantive motion. If the amendment is passed, we will not do a second vote unless members want it.
Thank you. So this is for, against, or abstention. Sam Akhtar.
For.
Keith Baker.
Abstain.
Parry Bath.
For.
Rachel Bishop Firth.
Against, and I think this is disgraceful.
Laura Blumenthal. Chris Bowring.
For.
Shirley Boyd.
Against.
Rachel Burgess.
Against.
Anne Chadwick. Jenny Cheng.
For.
Stephen Conway.
Against.
Phil Cunnington.
For.
Peter Dennis.
Against.
Lindsay Ferris.
Against.
Michael Firmager.
For.
Paul Fishwick.
Against.
Jem Pruin.
Abstain.
John Halsall.
For.
David Hare.
Against.
Paul Hellier-Simons.
For.
Graham Howe.
For.
Clive Jones.
Against.
Norman Jorgensen.
For.
John Kaiser.
For.
Sarah Kerr.
Against.
Abdul Loys.
Abstention.
Tahir Maher.
Against this desperate motion.
Morag Malvern.
Against. Firmly.
Charles Magetts.
For.
Rebecca Magetts.
For.
Adrian Mather.
Against.
Andrew Mickleby.
Against.
Stuart Monroe.
For.
Gregor Murray.
For.
Barry Patman.
For.
Jackie Ranks.
For.
Angus Ross.
For.
Daniel Sargent.
For.
Ian Shenton.
Against.
Imogen Shepherd-Debay.
Against. The original motion has what we need.
Rochelle Shepherd-Debay.
Against. The original motion has what we need.
Caroline Smith.
Against.
Chris Smith.
I wholeheartedly support Councillor Laura Blumenthal's amendment to this motion.
Wayne Smith.
For.
Bill Soane.
For.
Alison Swaddle.
For.
The amendment is agreed.
Thank you for that. We're now past the 22:30, 10:30. I'm assuming that council is okay about not having another vote. I'm not seeing anybody who's actually indicating they want that. So thank you for that, Councillor Jones.
The amended motion has not been approved. All he's done is approve the amendment.
The amendment has now become the substantive motion.
Yeah.
And we can go through, as I understand it, we can go through and immediately do another recorded vote. I'm not sure what we would achieve on that, but if that's what council wants to do, I don't think it will change, but I don't know. Councillor McGee, yeah.
I think on reflection, we won't go for another vote because all of the sheep over there.
Councillor Jones, please, can you keep it civil?
Yes,
I understand your
apologise.
anger, but please keep it civil.
I apologise, Mr. Mayor. I shouldn't call them sheep.
I'm not in the chamber. Thank you. And finally, before I close the meeting, there was something tonight, and I understand the anger that people feel about this particular motion. But please, when you are voting, please no further comment than either for, against, or abstain. It is actually not very polite to do that. And all it does is encourage others to start doing cross comment. So please, for the next meeting and onwards, do not make any other comment. Thank you. I declare the meeting now closed at 10:35.